Chapter 1692. P.S. I want to hear more of your voices and receive more of your suggestions. Search for the WeChat public account Dread and follow it. Give more support to Starry Sky Fiery. It was too terrifying. The power of a world-destroying demon god was extremely terrifying. Not only was his attack speed extremely fast, but he was also able to turn invisible energy into a tangible attack. His strength was amazing. Although that punch was not Lin Feng's full strength, the power of the 7-inch fist was already strong enough. However, he was still unable to block it. However, he was only slightly injured. Lin Feng moved his numb arm and grinned in surprise. His gaze landed on the ancient armor in front of his chest. An inexplicable sense of pleasure rose in his heart. He could not help but want to laugh out loud. Although the Pangu armor that he obtained from the Pangu staircase was not compatible, its defensive power was extremely strong. It was far beyond his imagination. He had only suffered a little impact. The weakened attack of the world-destroying demon god Sutra's 7-inch fist was unable to break through the defense of the Pangu armor. As expected of the armor left behind by Pangu Almighty, Lin Feng's eyes sparkled and he felt great. The impact was nothing to his physical body. His numb arm recovered very quickly. The recovery ability of his avatar was rather shocking. Although the Pangu armor was unremarkable, its defensive power was amazing. It even digested the dense aura of death. It was rather powerful. Although the attack of the world-destroying demon god is weaker than before, and the aura of death is also much weaker, but it can be seen that the defensive power of the Pangu armor is better than the shield of truth. And this is under the condition that it is not compatible. Lin Feng nodded. Heavenly treasures were second to none in the Douling world. However, that was only in the Douling world. It was nothing in the boundless starry sky world. Just this unremarkable Pangu armor alone was much stronger than the shield of truth. With this treasure protecting him, he was even more confident. Even the world-destroying demon god could not kill him at such close range. This was obviously good news. Let's try again. Lin Feng became bolder. He smiled faintly and stood up to provoke the world-destroying demon god again. Bang! Bang! Pung! Again and again, Lin Feng suffered from the fierce counterattacks of the world-destroying Fiend Celestial. He suffered at least dozens of attacks, but each time he was only slightly injured. Most of the power was blocked by the Pangu armor, and the Pangu armor remained intact. Roar! Roar! This caused the world-destroying demonic god to roar furiously, his face looking extremely ferocious. However, it was not stupid. After dozens of attacks, it no longer cared about the undying human in front of it and focused on attacking the restriction. It was clear that it knew what was more important to it at the moment. He's not stupid, but he's not that smart either. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled. It only reacted after dozens of attacks. It seemed that it was just as he had guessed. The world-destroying Fiend Celestial before him had limited intelligence. Its spiritual growth was probably at the infant stage, which was a level weaker than the spiritual growth of the Great Sage. It seems that the Great Sage has succeeded. Lin Feng smiled faintly. If the Great Sage had failed, the Great Sage would have returned long ago. Moreover, from Kuei Tinyuan's memories, the spirit of the Great Sage could return to the body of the world-destroying demon god. However, since the Great Sage had not returned and the spirit in the body of the world-destroying demon god was far weaker than the Great Sage, the answer was obvious. This was good news. The weaker the spirit, the weaker the strength of the world-destroying demon god. However, even with the current strength, when a world-destroying demon god escaped, it would be difficult for him to match it. Lin Feng looked at the restriction and saw that the light was dimming. His mood, which had just calmed down a little, became serious again. There was no doubt that the restriction would be broken sooner or later. It could be deduced from the fact that the energy of the restriction was gradually decreasing. After all, the world-destroying demon god had absorbed energy for 5 months. The memorial ceremony was already halfway done. What should I do? As Lin Feng circled the world-destroying demonic god, he frowned and pondered, trying to think of a solution. He did not believe that he would not be able to think of a solution when facing a trapped beast. Since even the heavens were helping him, there was no reason for the world-destroying demon god to be invulnerable. He must have a flaw. Where is the flaw? Lin Feng's eyes were shining, and he was deep in thought. He looked at the world-destroying demon god, and then at the restriction. Suddenly, energy. Yes, energy. Lin Feng clapped his hands, and his eyes flashed. The restriction has energy, the world-destroying demon god has energy, and I have energy too. Lin Feng nodded heavily. It was as if a door had been opened in the darkness, and he could see the light in the distance. The energy of the restriction was constantly decreasing. When it reached the freezing point, it would break. If his power of heaven and earth was depleted, his strength would naturally be less than 10%. What about the world-destroying demon god? The aura of death. He relied on the aura of death in the cemetery. The reason why he can endlessly deplete the restriction's energy is because there is an inexhaustible aura of death here. Lin Feng analyzed calmly. Once the aura of death is gone, what will he have left? Perhaps, if his intelligence is perfect, he will have completely absorbed the sacrificial energy and become a true superpowerhouse. Then, he will be able to generate the aura of death, but he is not perfect, and his intelligence is still in the early stages of development. He most likely does not have this ability. As long as I can cut off the source of his energy replenishment. Lin Feng's eyes shone, and he was overjoyed. What would the result be? Without the replenishment of the aura of death, no matter how strong the world-destroying demon god was, he was just a machine without energy. Perhaps he still had physical strength, but it was still unknown whether he could break the restriction. If he could completely destroy the entire cemetery and deplete the aura of death, perhaps the world-destroying demon god would be in eternal slumber. The idea was indeed perfect. However, it was much harder to use one's hands than to use one's brain. It was easier said than done. Where did the aura of death in the cemetery come from, and how did it form a cycle? Lin Feng racked his brains and could not come to a conclusion no matter how hard he tried. If Toto was here, he would naturally be able to solve the problem. However, there was no one he could rely on now. Lin Feng could only rely on himself. I originally thought that it was a neutral energy like the Earth Core fire, but it's clearly not. After entering the cemetery this time, the aura of death is more than 10 times denser than before. This is definitely not a coincidence, but a kind of change, an active change. It's the opening of the sacrificial ceremony. Lin Feng nodded and looked around. It was not difficult to determine. As far as he knew, this was the only change that had happened in the cemetery. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Clearly, the opening of the sacrificial ceremony had caused the aura of death in the cemetery to become completely different, and the key to containing it was clearly the center of the cemetery. However, where was in the center of the cemetery? Was it related to the world-destroying demon god? What about the restriction? Lin Feng pursed his lips tightly and was very hesitant. However, he could not get a definite answer. His gaze fell on the restriction, and he pondered. This time, the aura of death in the cemetery was too dense, and it was somewhat difficult to distinguish. However, it was different when he entered the cemetery for the first time. At that time, the aura of death was not so dense. What was the key? What made the aura of death change? In what way did the opening of the sacrificial ceremony affect the aura of death? Lin Feng could not figure it out. He sighed softly and relaxed his mind. He could not help but think of the periphery of the cemetery. He was stunned for a moment and could not help but smile bitterly and shake his head. There's always a flaw. I have always wanted to contain the source of the aura of death. In fact, although the aura of death exists in the cemetery, it is inextricably linked to the large-scale spirit gathering array on Demon Emperor Island. They form a stable cycle. Lin Feng's thoughts moved lightly. When he entered the cemetery for the first time, he had already found some clues. Although he could not be completely sure, he was at least 80% sure. The cemetery and Demon Emperor Island had an extremely close relationship. A part of the spiritual energy absorbed by the large-scale spirit gathering array would enter the cemetery and be transformed into the aura of death. As for how it was transformed, he really did not know. However, what if the large-scale spirit gathering array was destroyed? Thinking of this, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat and his eyes lit up. Anyway, he could not bring the large-scale spirit gathering array away, and it was not very useful at the moment. For the time being, he would not arrange for humans to enter the endless sea domain and be the neighbors of the world-destroying demon god. He could think of other things in the future. Right now, everything had to make way for the world-destroying demon god. So what if it was a waste? As long as he could survive this disaster, it would be worth it. Let's go. Thinking of this, Lin Feng immediately took action and no longer cared about the world-destroying demon god. Anyway, it would not be able to break the restriction in a short time. Moreover, he could not do anything about it, even if he wanted to. Lin Feng's departure was not stopped. In fact, even if there was, it would not be able to stop Lin Feng. After leaving the cemetery, Lin Feng went straight to Demon Emperor Island without hesitation. Swoosh! Like a shooting star, Lin Feng's speed was extremely fast. He was racing against time. He might not know about other things, but he was very clear about the location of the large-scale spirit gathering array's array core. It was at the top of Demon Emperor Island, high-grade spirit, supreme jade. If I destroy it, the large-scale spirit gathering array will lose its effect. In the cemetery, the aura of death will have no source and will not be able to circulate and replenish. Everything will be done naturally. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled, and he was certain. The existence of the high-grade spirit Supreme Jade was not only the array core, but also the key. With the help of the large-scale spirit gathering array, the high-grade spirit Supreme Jade would absorb powerful spiritual energy and release its essence. It could be said that it was the core of the entire spirit gathering array. Without it, the large-scale spirit gathering array would not exist. It was the same for the small-scale spirit gathering array. Its core was the high-grade spirit Supreme Jade. As long as the array core was destroyed, the large-scale spirit gathering array would naturally stop operating. Swoosh! Lin Feng's body was like a phantom as he stopped in the sky above Demon Emperor Island. He was like a god of war standing there. At the top of Demon Emperor Island, it emitted a dazzling light, as if it was the only light in the sky. The powerful suction force was like a black hole, gathering the spirit chi from all directions. Its existence was the center of the entire island tower. With it, as the apex, fine spirit chi light scattered down, forming transparent lines that connected the entire island tower together. High-grade spirit Supreme Jade. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Without stopping, he shot out like a sharp arrow and went straight to the top of Demon Emperor Island. His goal was extremely clear. The novel Refining the Starry Sky by Fire will have more new content on the official WeChat platform. At the same time, there is a 100% chance of a lucky draw for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign on the top right to add friend, search for the public account Dread, and follow it. Hurry up! Chapter 1693. P.S. I want to hear more of your voices and receive more of your suggestions. Search for Dread on WeChat and follow it. Give more support to Fire Smelting the Starry Sky. It was the core of the entire large-scale spirit gathering array. It was unique in the Douling world, and even in the Starry Sky world, it was valuable. However, at this moment, in Lin Feng's eyes, it was just a stone blocking the way. Get rid of it. After the massacre, Demon Emperor Island was in a state of depression, like a vast desert. Lin Feng's entry didn't attract any attacks from the Demon Clan. In fact, he didn't see any Demon Clan experts. The massacre a few days ago was unforgettable, and the Demon Clan was terrified. Until now, there was still a strong smell of blood on Demon Emperor Island. Clang! The illusory spear in Lin Feng's hand formed instantly, and the rich power of heaven and earth poured out. Lin Feng's speed had reached the limit. The 7-inch fist could be used according to his will. The power of the heavens and earth had merged perfectly with the illusory spear. Lin Feng stood firmly in the air and instantly unleashed his ultimate combat strength. The power of the spear caused the space to tremble. However, bang! Lin Feng's head exploded, and he was stunned. Puff! Blood was spat out from his throat, and Lin Feng groaned. The strong impact made him bounce back, and his chest felt like it was struck by lightning. The power of heaven and earth dissipated, and Lin Feng's right arm was completely numb. He pursed his lips, and his eyes showed a hint of surprise. What a strong defense! While retreating, Lin Feng stared at the upper-grade Supreme Jade, and the light was still as bright as ever. Pah! Stopping his retreat, Lin Feng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his chest rose and fell. Although he didn't underestimate the large-scale spirit-gathering array, he was still shocked by its strong defense. The spear just now wasn't his strongest attack, but it couldn't even touch the upper-grade Supreme Jade. Indeed, it didn't touch it. His attack didn't break the defense of the large-scale spirit-gathering array. Sure enough, even if it's just an auxiliary spirit energy absorption array, it's still at the starry sky level. Lin Feng was secretly shocked. He clenched his fist, and his numb arm had already recovered. The injury he suffered was only for an instant and was not serious. The moment he was repelled by the reaction force, he had already removed the illusory spear, reducing the damage by at least 70%. His gaze swept across the surroundings. Apart from the high-grade Supreme Jade, he couldn't see anything else in the entire large-scale spirit-gathering formation. Moreover, even if it was other intermediate objects, it would be at least the same as the upper-grade Supreme Jade. First, it would have to break through the defense of the large-scale spirit-gathering array. After all, the array itself was a whole. Let's try again. Lin Feng closed his eyes and calmed himself down. In an instant, the rich power of heaven and earth gathered from all directions. Lin Feng's spirit condensed, and his entire being seemed to have become one with heaven and earth. Using the Panga tactic to its limit, the streams of energy converged into one, like rivers converging into an ocean. Lin Feng's aura suddenly skyrocketed. His strongest attack, he directly unleashed all the power of his Force Soul, bringing out the strongest power of the 7-inch fist. Illusory spear? There was no need for that. Huff, puff, Lin Feng adjusted his breathing. At this moment, there were no distractions in his mind, and all his power was concentrated on his fist. Although he had learned the 7-inch fist, it was only at the beginner level. He was still unable to use the spear to bring out the full power of the 7-inch fist. His fist might be slightly weaker in terms of realm and attack range, but it wasn't important at this moment. After all, the high-grade Supreme Jade was an inanimate object. It couldn't move. Pa! Lin Feng opened his eyes, and his aura instantly reached its peak. Once again, he rushed out like a flash of lightning. Using the Panga tactic, all the power of heaven and earth in his body instantly flowed into his arm. A bright white light flashed, and the power of his Force Soul was completely unleashed. The power flowed from his arm to his Force Soul, and then from his Force Soul to his fist. Lin Feng's attack was like moving clouds and flowing water. 7-inch fist, 100% power. Boom! Lin Feng's punch caused the heavens and earth to shatter. With a loud rumble, the power of heaven and earth collided with a large-scale spirit-gathering array, and a terrifying power erupted. The entire large-scale spirit-gathering array shook violently, and even the entire Demon Emperor Island seemed to be experiencing an earthquake. The heaven and earth shook, and the airflow scattered in all directions. Did Lin Feng succeed? The mist created by the intense collision slowly dissipated, gradually revealing a faint light. It emitted waves of light, as if the bright stars were still shining brightly. The high-grade Supreme Jade was like a high and mighty Jade Emperor, overlooking the heaven and earth. It wasn't damaged at all. Lin Feng failed. In the distance, The black figure in the ancient armor had a pale face. His arms were hanging by his side, and there were bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. Lin Feng stared at the high-grade supreme jade, and a sense of helplessness rose in his heart. He had exhausted all his power, but he only touched the edge of breaking the large-scale spirit-gathering array. It was difficult for him to take another step, and this touch of the edge was meaningless. When his foresoul recovered and he could punch out with 100% power again, the large-scale spirit-gathering array would have already repaired itself. Besides, even if he broke the large-scale spirit-gathering array, would the remaining power be enough to break the high-grade supreme jade? He couldn't. The answer was obvious. It's still not working. Lin Feng sighed slightly. After the first attack, he actually had a feeling, and the result was just as expected. Even if his attack power was already at the Starry Sky level, the large-scale spirit-gathering array was also a Starry Sky level array, even if it was only the weakest auxiliary array. However, he couldn't break it. He couldn't break it. There was no difference between a little bit and a lot at the moment. Although the idea was good, what was the use of an idea that couldn't be implemented? If he couldn't break the large-scale spirit-gathering array, how could he cut off the source of the death aura? Lin Feng frowned. It wasn't easy to find a way in the darkness, but this way was sealed. This feeling was extremely oppressive. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Suddenly, after coming back to his senses, Lin Feng turned his head abruptly and saw a familiar figure coming slowly from afar. The speed was not fast, and it seemed that the person was injured. A glint flashed across Lin Feng's eyes. The newcomer was none other than the Blood Tiger Emperor, Kuei Tianyuan, who had spared his life. Looking at him, it was obvious that he had fought with Foxy. Why? Are you here to stop me? Lin Feng smiled indifferently. The large-scale spirit-gathering array was the lifeblood of the demon clan. He had expected that the violent fluctuation just now would alarm the remaining experts of the demon clan on Demon Emperor Island. However, it didn't matter. Kuei Tianyuan's eyes flashed with a trace of blood, and he laughed loudly. I don't have that ability. His voice was slightly hoarse, and his breath was fluctuating. Kuei Tianyuan's injury was not light, but his spirit was quite good, and his mood seemed quite good. Foxy is dead? Lin Feng asked. The corner of Kuei Tianyuan's mouth curled up into a sneer. I caught her in the act. She's dead. Although his voice was calm, Lin Feng could imagine that the battle in the secret space must have been thrilling. Foxy had been hiding her strength, and Kuei Tianyuan might not be able to defeat her with his previous strength. However, after the battle with the demon god incarnation, Kuei Tianyuan's strength had increased by another level. Even so, he seemed to have paid a high price to get his revenge. Congratulations, Lin Feng said indifferently. Although Kuei Tianyuan was not an enemy, he was not a friend either. Lin Feng would not have a deep relationship with him. Moreover, there were many things in his mind, and he had no time to chat with him. Kuei Tianyuan's eyes flashed. With his experience, he quickly understood Lin Feng's actions. He hesitated for a moment and said, Do you need my help? Lin Feng turned to look at Kuei Tianyuan. Their eyes met, and he smiled. You want to help me? The large-scale spirit-gathering array was the lifeblood of the demon race. Destroying it was equivalent to destroying the foundation of the demon race. It was good enough that Kuei Tianyuan did not stop him, but he volunteered to help. Lin Feng looked at this former enemy of his and felt a little curious. Kuei Tianyuan laughed self-deprecatingly. Do you think that after this battle, the demon race still has a chance to revive? His gaze swept across the entire Demon Emperor Island and then landed on Lin Feng. His meaning was obvious. Most of the elites of the demon race had been killed by him. Coupled with the death of the 3,000 demon gods, the demon race had long been finished. Since you know the secret of this place, you will definitely send the elites of the human race in the future. The demon race has lost its momentum, and there is no way to reverse the situation. As he spoke, Kuei Tianyuan's face flashed with a hint of loneliness. Moreover, even if the demon race could still preserve this demon race's forbidden land, what's the use? Once the demon gods are born, everything will be for naught. With a trembling voice, Kue Tianyuan's eyes were filled with fear. As a part of the ceremony, as one of the demon emperors who knew the most secrets, he feared the world, destroying demon gods from the bottom of his heart. His soul trembled. I know that you want to deal with the world destroying demon gods. Although you are overestimating yourself, but Kue Tianyuan smiled faintly and looked straight at Lin Feng. At least on this point, I support you. After losing the energy source of the ceremony, the world destroying demon gods will definitely try to break free from the restriction in a frenzy. The time of their descent, I'm afraid it will be much earlier than the original 6 months. How much earlier? Lin Feng's eyes burned. I don't know. Kue Tianyuan shook his head with a blank expression. Although the energy absorption is not enough to give birth to a perfect demon god body, I estimate that its ability is at least 10 to 20%, at most 30 to 40%, or even 50%, but what? Lin Feng asked. Kue Tianyuan pondered for a while and said hesitantly, his condition is a little strange. Oh. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes and stared at Kue Tianyuan. He said slowly, you have recovered your memory? Kue Tianyuan nodded and did not hide anything. After my soul was searched by you, the memories of those 5 months can be seen one after another. The process of the ceremony seems perfect, but it is a little different from what I know. I have thought about it for a long time. This strange thing is very likely, because there was a problem with the first step of awakening the world, destroying demon god spirit. Lin Feng's expression did not change. He listened to Kue Tianyuan quietly. His judgment was the same. It was not a wild guess. Kue Tianyuan also realized it. Not only his body, but his spirit was also very abnormal, especially in the last few days. Kue Tianyuan's eyes flickered. He said slowly, he seemed to be in a lot of pain. We could vaguely feel that kind of pain, as if he was severely injured. Lin Feng shuddered. What Kue Tianyuan said this time was something he could not find out by searching his memory. The way he mentioned was obviously the 3,000 demon gods, and the world-destroying demon gods' so-called pain, if he guessed correctly, should be because a part of his spirit that had been awakened for a long time had disappeared after the great sage's body was taken back. As expected, I know what you were thinking. Kue Tianyuan changed his tone and looked straight at Lin Feng. You want to cut off his energy. As long as he can't replenish his energy, he may not be able to use his strength no matter how strong he is. Just relying on his physical strength, his strength will be greatly reduced. You have a way? Lin Feng's eyes lit up as his heart trembled. The novel Refining the Starry Sky by Fire will have more new content on the official WeChat platform. At the same time, there is a 100% chance of a lucky draw gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign on the top right to add friend, search for the public account Dread, and follow it. Hurry! Chapter 1694. Kue Tianyuan shook his head. Lin Feng frowned and felt a little disappointed. If I had a way, I would have done it long ago. I wouldn't have waited until now. Kue Tianyuan said slowly. The spirit-gathering array passed down by our ancestors is unbreakable. Even if 100 Saint King-level experts gathered, they might not be able to break it, let alone me alone. But there's a place that might hide some important secrets. I'm not sure, but I might be able to help you. Kue Tianyuan looked at Lin Feng with a burning gaze. Lin Feng was moved. Looking at Kue Tianyuan, the memories he obtained from Soul Search instantly flipped open like a page of a book. You mean the 7th floor of Demon Emperor Island? Kue Tianyuan nodded and said seriously, our ancestors may have left some secrets in the 7th floor. Unfortunately, the strength of our monster clan's descendants is not enough. Countless years have passed, but not a single monster clan expert has been able to enter the 7th floor of the monster sovereign island. Even the commander who was at the peak of his strength failed. But according to my estimation, Lin Feng, you should have the hope of reaching the 7th floor. Since you've searched my memories, you should know that I'm not lying to you. Kuei Tianyuan stared straight at Lin Feng with a cold gaze. Indeed, he was not lying. Memories wouldn't lie. At this moment, Lin Feng had already flipped through the information about the 7th level of the Demon Emperor Island. In Kuei Tianyuan's memory, there had never been a descendant of the demon clan who had entered the 7th level. That place was like a true forbidden area. Even a great saint couldn't set foot there. It was normal. Lin Feng was well aware. When he entered Demon Emperor Island for the first time, he could only enter the 6th floor with all his strength. If he wanted to enter the 7th floor, he was weaker than a great saint. How could he enter? But today, the strength of his doppelganger had improved by leaps and bounds. He was more than several times stronger than a great saint. Just as Kuei Tianyuan said, the hope was quite high. Back then, the 3,000 demon gods had unintentionally created an anomaly like the world-destroying demon god. They were filled with regret. That's why I use a restriction to trap it and seal its spirit. Just in case, there's a high possibility that he left behind a method for the descendants of the demon race in the 7th level of the demon race's forbidden ground. Or perhaps it's a method to restrict him. Lin Feng thought to himself, his eyes glittering. No matter what, it's a method I have to try. Thank you. Lin Feng nodded gratefully at Kuei Tianyuan. Indeed, there was no such thing as an eternal enemy. Although they belonged to different camps before, they were now united against a common enemy. Be careful, it might be dangerous, Kuei Tianyuan warned. I know, Lin Feng replied. After which, he rose into the air and headed straight for the Demon Emperor Island. Quick! Just as Kuei Tianyuan had said, there was not much time left before the world-destroying demon god descended. Enter from the outside. The power of the white spirit energy wave at close range was quite terrifying. Back then, he could only force his way into the 5th level. He couldn't even do the 6th level. Even with the strength of his clone, Lin Feng didn't have the slightest confidence that he could force his way into the 7th level. Moreover, there was a simple way. There was no need to confront the white spirit energy wave head-on. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure slowly appeared. In front of him was a familiar cylinder that emitted a milky white light. Lin Feng stood still. His eyes flashed slightly, and he directly entered. To enter the 7th level, using this transportation channel was the simplest and most direct way. If he withstood the pressure, he could go up another level. Back then, his main body was able to enter the 6th level. Now, there must be no problem. A fierce expression appeared on Lin Feng's face. The pressure was like Mount Tai pressing down on him. That was a pressure that came from all directions, without any blind spots. It was more than 10 times stronger than the pressure he felt when he entered the 6th level. It was like a raging storm, each wave stronger than the previous one. No wonder the great sage failed back then. Lin Feng focused and gritted his teeth. This pressure was a comprehensive power. Even his soul and body were strongly impacted. As long as any part of his body couldn't withstand it, he wouldn't be able to pass through this transportation channel. There were mournful sounds in his ears, like the roars of ghosts. Even his willpower was being tested. If his main body came, he might not be able to pass through. His main body's physical strength was still a little weak, but his clone could withstand it. Huh! Lin Feng roared in a low voice. His body abruptly soared up into the clouds. Above him, there seemed to be a boundless amount of pressure. However, at this moment, it was unable to obstruct Lin Feng's determination. Lin Feng's eruption was extremely direct, instantly penetrating through that layer of pressure. Ha! That feeling was like stepping on the clouds. The thunder and lightning disappeared instantly, and the pressure disappeared. As if relieved of a burden, Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and the corner of his mouth raised into a smile. Success! He successfully reached the 7th level of the Demon Emperor Island. Since the ancestors of the Demon Clan set it up, no expert of the Demon Clan had entered this mysterious area. It seemed easy, but it wasn't. In fact, the longer the time, the slimmer the chance of success. Because the pressure was always there, the more time he spent, the more exhausted he would be. He could only do it in one go. If he didn't, there was nothing he could do. The pressure on my soul is the greatest. Lin Feng took a deep breath and calmed his mind. If there was a standard for entering the 7th level, the strength of his clone's body was more than enough. His willpower was even easier. Only his soul's defense was barely passable. If it was his main body's Pangu pupil, it would be much easier. However, his main body's body couldn't even reach the passable level. But why did the ancestors of the demon clan set such a high condition? Lin Feng was puzzled. The condition to enter the 7th level of the Demon Emperor Island was so high that no one in the entire Douling world could do it. Indeed, after the ancestors of the demon clan, no one else could set foot on this level. Was it just to hide the secret of the demon clan? Or was there another reason? He would know once he checked. Lin Feng pursed his lips and didn't dare to be careless. Who knew what kind of secret the 7th level of the Demon Emperor Island had? Maybe there was some huge danger hidden there. However, he wasn't worried about encountering danger. He was worried that his efforts would be in vain or encountering the restriction of the 7th level. The restriction of the 6th level was already so difficult. The condition to enter the 7th level was even harsher. If there was a restriction on the 7th level, the difficulty of breaking the restriction was simply unimaginable. I hope everything goes well. Lin Feng prayed in his heart. With the passage as the center, he explored the entire 7th level in circles. As the top of the Demon Emperor Island, the island closest to the high-grade Supreme Jade, the 7th level wasn't big. It could even be said to be very small. However, it was the most significant. According to Kuei Tianyuan's memory, the 7th level of the Demon Emperor Island definitely hid the secret of the demon clan. And this was his current hope. Since the 3,000 demon gods had trapped the world-exterminating demon god with restrictions, they must have left behind a contingency plan to prevent the demon race's descendants from accidentally awakening the world-exterminating demon god, leading to the extinction of the demon race. Where is it? Where is the secret of the demon clan? Lin Feng's eyes flickered with a bright light. Wherever his eyes focused, he carefully observed and didn't let go of any clues. Finally, restriction. He saw another restriction. Lin Feng's eyes widened, but he couldn't vent his anger. What he saw in front of him was a mysterious golden region. It was in the shape of a spiral and looked like a coiled python. It also looked like an exquisite and curved pyramid. The golden light made one's heart tremble. There were countless mysterious patterns engraved on it that flickered with a strange light. What powerful energy! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Even from such a distance, he could feel the huge energy aura of the golden spiral pyramid. It was hidden within. From afar to near, everything could be seen. There was nothing hidden. Not only was the snake-shaped pyramid extremely mysterious, what was more shocking was that at the top of the snake-shaped pyramid, there was a white spatial door that flickered with a strange light. What's that? A passage? Or some kind of special existence? Lin Feng's eyes sparkled as he stared at the white spatial door above. His heart was filled with doubts and curiosity. Obviously, to get close to or even enter the white spatial door, one must first enter the passageway of the snake-shaped pyramid. However, just the faint layer of golden light that was condensed around the white spatial door was filled with powerful energy. This was the restriction of the 7th floor. Even the 6th floor's restriction was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, let alone the 7th floor's restriction. Lin Feng knew his ability very well. In terms of fighting ability, he might be the best in the Douling world. However, in terms of breaking restrictions and formations, he was only SOSO. Even in the human camp, there were many people who were better than him in terms of restrictions and formations. Back then, he was able to break the 6th floor's restriction more or less because of his mother's guidance. Today, he needed to break the 7th floor's restriction himself. No one could help him because no one else could enter. I can only try. Lin Feng was shocked. He couldn't think of any other way at the moment. He could only take it one step at a time. There must be some secret hidden in the 7th floor's restriction, especially that white spatial door. He felt it even more deeply. There must be a secret in it. He would know once he entered. Bang! The power of heaven and earth gathered in his hand. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. He slowly reached out his arm and touched the faint layer of golden light. Instantly, clang, there was a violent vibration. A powerful force directly shook Lin Feng away. It was like a demon god roaring. Step! Lin Feng took 3 steps back before he could steady himself. His eyes were filled with shock. It was quite powerful. Just touching it had caused such a reaction. What would happen if he forced his way in? Come! The power of heaven and earth gathered again. The Pangu technique circulated throughout his body instantly. His physical strength had not fully recovered. Lin Feng didn't plan to use the full power of the 7-inch fist. After all, the 7-inch fist could be used but not withdrawn. The stronger the attack, the greater the rebound. Although the illusory spear's power was slightly weaker, he could immediately withdraw it to reduce the rebound if he felt something was wrong. This was Lin Feng's rich experience after he ran into a wall many times. And this time, he saved himself. Bang! With a loud sound, Lin Feng fell hundreds of feet away. His face was extremely pale. The illusory spear in his hand had already disappeared. Even the power of heaven and earth had collapsed. His aura was extremely weak. Lin Feng looked at the serpent-shaped pyramid in the distance. The protective wall emitted a faint golden light. His heart trembled violently. This was a terrifying defense that he had never encountered before. Chapter 1695. A single counterattack had directly caused him to be seriously injured. His previous feeling was not wrong at all. The power and level of this snake-shaped pyramid were far beyond his imagination. Phew! Exhaling a long breath, Lin Feng's chest heaved up and down, his eyes flashing. Thinking of the sudden burst of power, he still felt a lingering fear. If he had not withdrawn his illusory spear quickly, he would not have been just seriously injured. He might have even been killed. No matter how strong the defensive power of the Pangu armor was, the impact was not part of its defense. Fortunately, I did not use the 7-inch fist. Lin Feng smiled self-deprecatingly. If he had used the 7-inch fist to attack at close range, he would have died in vain. Such a terrifying snake-shaped pyramid was simply unheard of. The defensive strength of this layer alone surpassed that of a large spirit-gathering array, so one could imagine its origin. There was no doubt that it was set up by the 3,000 demon gods who were at the starry sky level. This was the 7th layer of the restriction. The area where the greatest secret of the demon race was hidden was indeed extraordinary. Isn't this playing with me? Lin Feng smiled bitterly and shook his head. Even with his strength, he could not break the defense. It was hard to imagine what kind of strength one needed to enter this snake-shaped pyramid. A starry sky expert? If one really reached the starry sky level, would the existence of this pyramid still be meaningful? Besides, even if a demon race expert broke through to the starry sky level, they might not be able to break through this gold foil defense. After all, according to Duo, his fighting strength had basically reached the starry sky level, but his strength level was not there yet. Looking at the snake-shaped pyramid with shining eyes, Lin Feng's mind was filled with thousands of thoughts. He felt that something was wrong. There was no reason for the defense of the pyramid to be so strong, like a seamless egg without any gaps. There must be a way. But what way? Suddenly, stupid, Lin Feng clapped his hands and could not help but scold. He almost forgot. What was the condition to enter the 6th layer of restriction? The double extreme, revered emperor array? Demon bloodline. This was the forbidden area of the demon race, a place left by the 3,000 demon gods for the future generations of the demon race. Naturally, there would be standards, and the biggest one was to have the bloodline of the demon race. This point, in fact, was not difficult to understand. It was normal for the 3,000 demon gods to have selfish motives. The secrets of the demon race were only known to the demon race themselves. Well, once we try, Lin Feng softly muttered. In an instant, a figure appeared in front of him. Refining puppets. Demonic beasts with the purest demonic bloodline were now at the pinnacle of the saint level. Master, Alchemy said respectfully. Help me try and see if I can enter, Lin Feng said. Be careful. If there's anything wrong, inform me immediately. Yes. Lien Puppet lowered its head and rolled its eyes. It came to the front of the snake-shaped pyramid. Just like Lin Feng, it cautiously touched the faint golden light wall. However, something strange happened. It was as if the golden light wall did not exist. Lien Puppet's hand went through it effortlessly. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Even Lien Puppet was a little surprised. However, it did not last for long. Soon, its whole body slowly entered the pyramid. Lin Feng's heart instantly rose as Lien Puppet entered. As a contracted demonic beast, Lien Puppet could see everything it saw. After entering the golden light wall, the snake-shaped pyramid was even clearer. However, looking at it from afar and up close, it was completely different. It was huge. If looking through the golden light wall, the snake-shaped pyramid was like a model. Looking at it up close, it was like a towering mountain. It was majestic and magnificent. Layers of golden stripes dazzled the eyes, giving off an unattainable and mysterious feeling. The bottom of the pyramid was clearly visible. The entrance was right in front of it. Swoosh! Lien Puppet quickly came to the entrance at the bottom of the pyramid. In front of it was a sea of colorful lights, just like the hallucinatory magic mirror. Lien Puppet hesitated for a moment before entering it. However, in an instant, it seemed to have entered a space full of mirrors. There was no way out. Pa! 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 He ran into a wall everywhere. Buzzing sounds came from nowhere and were reflected in the mirror space, forming a terrifying consciousness attack. Oh no! Lin Feng knew that things were not good. Through Lien Puppet's vision, he could see the current situation. It was terrible. Illusion. It was not just an ordinary illusion. The buzzing sounds were louder and louder, directly damaging the soul. Lien Puppet was only a saint-level expert. Moreover, the demon race's cultivation of the soul was the weakest. Entering, it was a dead end. Come back. Lin Feng moved and tried to summon Lien Puppet back. He could feel Lien Puppet's pain. The damage to the soul was like being cut by a knife. However, a layer of invisible force blocked the summoning of power. The faint golden light wall flashed with a strange color. The wall was like the distance between heaven and earth. Failure. Come back. Come back. Lin Feng was extremely worried. He tried again and again, but the result was the same every time. Failure. Failure again. Damn it. Lin Feng clenched his fists and blue veins popped out. He was extremely anxious. Lien Puppet was in trouble, but could not help. This feeling of helplessness was terrible. His mood sank to the bottom. Lien Puppet was not only a contracted magical beast, it was also his friend. Lin Feng did not want it to die here. The powerful illusion was enough to make people lose themselves forever and die. Needless to say, the sound attack was getting stronger and stronger. The damage to the soul was getting worse and worse. He could feel that Lien Puppet's breath was getting weaker. Bang! Lin Feng's vision turned dark and his heart sank. The colorful lights in front of him disappeared instantly. When his consciousness returned, he saw the tall, snake-shaped pyramid. He looked over and saw that Lien Puppet had fallen outside the pyramid. Its breath was weak. Fortunately, it was only injured and not dead. At least its consciousness was still intact. I fail, Master. Lien Puppet's voice was weak and hoarse. There was a hint of guilt. You have done well. Come back. Lin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Lien Puppet was fine. Otherwise, he would have pushed it to its death. Lien Puppet then passed through the golden light wall, and its figure slowly disappeared. Pursing his lips, Lin Feng's gaze was extremely complicated. Although Lien Puppet's attempt had ended in failure, its value was very high. At least, he understood a lot of the seventh layer's barriers and had a general understanding of it. First of all, one must have a monster clan bloodline to enter. Lin Feng nodded secretly. The golden light wall was so strong that he could not rely on luck. If he tried to force his way in, he was afraid that he would die. Who knew if the golden light wall would be even stronger next time? Secondly, the golden light wall is only the first barrier. It serves as a screening. The real problem is inside the snake-shaped pyramid. The danger's inside the pyramid. Even an ordinary Saint King Realm Master would find it difficult to resist. Lin Feng whispered. He felt a deep pressure. Just the mirror space he had seen was so terrifying. What kind of danger would there be in the future? It would only get more and more terrifying. Fortunately, the existence of the snake-shaped pyramid seemed to be a screening and would not kill people. Otherwise, Lien Puppet would not be able to come out alive. With the intensity of the sonic boom, Lien Puppet's soul would be shattered in less than half an incense stick's time. This was the 7th layer's barrier. It would be great if I could enter. Lin Feng's heart was moved. The feeling of being so far away from him was extremely uncomfortable. The higher the difficulty of the serpentine pyramid, the more important it felt to him. The repeated selections seemed to exist for a certain purpose, and this purpose was very likely to exist for the sake of destroying the demon god. At the very least, he could not think of any other possibilities. Find other Monster Clan masters to enter? Lin Feng frowned and instantly thought of Kuei Tianyuan. However, he couldn't even enter the 7th level, let alone the others. A great saint? Perhaps he should have the ability now, but there was no news of him. His whereabouts were unpredictable. If he did not show up voluntarily, it would be harder to find him. Moreover, he did not have a deep friendship with him. Whether he was willing to help him was still unknown. Was there any other way? There was one more. Myself. Lin Feng's eyes were deep. He understood clearly. His original body had inherited the phoenix blood and could be considered a member of the monster clan. He could try to pass through the golden light wall. With his original body strength, he could definitely pass through the snake-shaped pyramid. At least, he could pass through the first level easily without any bloodshed. The only thing he was worried about was, if his original body entered, what would happen to the human territory? Without him, if something unexpected happened, he would be too far away to help. I can't care so much. Lin Feng quickly made up his mind. His eyes were cold. Everything now had to make way for the world-destroying demon god. Everything else could be dealt with later. Otherwise, if his original body succeeded, his doppelganger could also return to the human territory to take care of it. Moreover, with such a serious injury, he believed that with the strength of the human and ancient clans alliance, he should not be in too much danger for the time being. Although he had to think twice before he acted, he did not have much time left. No matter what, let's see if my original body can pass through the golden light wall. Lin Feng thought to himself. His original body immediately ended his cultivation and left the star-stepping mansion. He greeted Shun. Light flashed between his brows. Lin Feng's figure split into two, and his original body appeared. Whoosh! Without stopping, his original body directly touched the golden light wall. Whoosh! As the golden light wall flickered, Lin Feng felt even more nervous. However, his arm easily passed through it, as if he had entered a new space. Lin Feng was overjoyed. In an instant, he passed through the first obstacle and successfully passed through. Good. Lin Feng was moved. It was indeed a good start. His judgment was correct. With the blood of the divine beast phoenix, his original body was indeed judged as a member of the monster clan by the restriction. The snake-shaped pyramid was right in front of him. Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes flickered. He took a deep breath. In an instant, he entered it. He would go all out. Chapter 1696. He entered the snake-shaped pyramid. This time, Lin Feng was no longer a spectator. He would no longer wait outside anxiously and do nothing. The entrance of his real body was exactly the same as the entrance of Refined Puppet. Instantly, he was enveloped by the colorful lights and entered the world of the mirror. His ears were filled with a piercing, buzzing sound. Experiencing it in person was much more profound and direct than experiencing it with his eyes. Break! Pangu's eyes shone brightly. Lin Feng's soul condensed. In the blink of an eye, the spinning mirror in front of him disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by deep lines that were strangely carved on the ancient stone wall. Obviously, this was the main culprit behind the illusion. Cold wind blew from the depths and made contact with the patterns on the stone wall. It became extremely ear-piercing. For cultivators with weaker willpower, it was like a demonic sound piercing their ears and causing great damage to their souls. However, it was useless to Lin Feng. He was indifferent. In terms of willpower, there was no difference between the main body and the clone. However, in terms of the strength of the soul, the main body was much stronger than the clone. It was not only because the main body was a heavenly god who specialized in the soul lineage, but also because of the existence of Pangu's eyes. The illusion could be broken with a thought. However, this seemed to be just the beginning, a small test. Swoosh! Lin Feng's Pangu's eyes shone. He looked into the depths and saw nothing. It was pitch black, just like what he saw outside. The passageway of the snake-shaped pyramid was also snake-shaped. Cold wind blew, but he did not know where it came from. It seemed to be warning him that there was danger ahead. Go! Lin Feng did not shrink back. He faced the difficulties head-on. The road to becoming an emperor was bumpy. He had seen all kinds of hardships. To Lin Feng, he had seen too many of such situations. Every time, he would be able to overcome it and successfully survive the calamity. This time was no exception, because he already had no way out. The main body's entry proved Lin Feng's determination. He would not stop until he got rid of the world-destroying demon god. On the other hand, the clone was much more relaxed now. After a slight hesitation, Lin Feng left the restriction. There was no point in standing guard here. He might as well continue exploring the 7th floor. Perhaps there would be other clues. Right now, any clues were very important. Moreover, his avatar was idle, and he did not know when his main body would reach the top of the serpentine pyramid and enter the white spatial door. 2 hours. 4 hours later. 6 hours. Lin Feng probed for a full 10 hours before he finished. Although it would take a lot of time to confirm that there was nothing suspicious on the 7th level of Demon Sovereign Island other than the restriction, it was a necessary step. Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief. There was no disappointment on his face, but he wasn't happy either. After 10 whole hours, his main body was still pacing back and forth. It was as if he was walking on a road with no end. What's going on? Maze formation. Lin Feng knew very well. As expected, the mirror space was only the first checkpoint. The entire 7th floor's restriction was created for screening. There were layers after layers, and what he encountered now should be the second checkpoint. The maze formation was not difficult, but it was not easy either. If he walked randomly, he might not be able to get out even after countless years. However, if he found the trick and the method, getting out of the maze formation was just a matter of thought. Now, a full 10 hours had passed, and he still had no clue. His progress was stagnant. Time waits for no one. My main body can enter, but it's hard to get out. I have to think of a way now. Lin Feng frowned slightly. At this time, the connection between his avatar and his main body had been cut off. The existence of the serpentine pyramid was like an iron door, forcibly isolating him. Although he had expected it before, he was still a little anxious now. Although he could feel his main body, there was nothing he could do to call it back. The question now was, how long would it take for his main body to reach the top? How many checkpoints were there in the serpentine pyramid test? During this period, could his main body make it to the white spatial door before the world-destroying demon god arrived? Taking a step back, was there really a way to stop the world-destroying demon god in the white spatial door? Even if there was, could he do it or use it? There were too many variables. I can't put all my eggs in one basket. I have to think of another way to ensure that nothing goes wrong. The more hope there is, the more possibility there is. The possibility of my main body succeeding is less than 50%. After careful consideration, Lin Feng was calm. The serpentine pyramid was so powerful and unfathomable that he did not have the slightest confidence. Instead of placing his hope on luck and the unknown, it was better to grasp it in his own hands. After walking through the entire Demon Emperor Island, Lin Feng stopped in front of the transportation channel. Looking at the transportation channel that was shining with a bright luster, Lin Feng's eyes were bright. The closer it was, the easier it was to be ignored. The core of the large-scale spirit gathering formation is the top-notch high-grade Supreme Jade. However, this transportation channel is connected to the Demon Emperor Island like an axis, and the high-grade Supreme Jade. Lin Feng raised his head and looked up. On the 7th floor of the Demon Emperor Island, the place closest to the high-grade Supreme Jade, he could clearly see that the top of the transportation channel was precisely the high-grade Supreme Jade. Indeed, with his current strength, he was still far from being able to destroy the high-grade Supreme Jade. However, what about this transportation channel? Since he could come and go freely in the transportation channel, and even reach the 7th floor, which was the most difficult, it meant that his strength was above the transportation channel. If he were to destroy the transportation channel, what kind of effect would it bring? It seems like it has no effect on the large-scale spirit gathering formation, but it is not. Lin Feng nodded secretly. He knew the foundation of formations like the back of his hand. Even Duo was certain that Shun's basic knowledge was solid. Shun had once said that there was a reason for its existence. Every part of a formation had its own specific purpose. Perhaps a formation was best known for its life gate, death gate, and the core of the formation. However, one could not ignore the existence of other details. Just like a machine, the damage of one part could cause the entire machine to be unable to operate. The high-grade Supreme Jade and the large-scale spirit gathering formation are obviously centered on the Demon Emperor Island. If I can destroy the transportation channel, it is equivalent to destroying the pillars that support the roof, causing the bridge between the Demon Emperor Island and the high-grade Supreme Jade to lose its connection. It may cause the large-scale spirit gathering formation to change, and the change of the large-scale spirit gathering formation is very likely to affect the cemetery in the death aura. Pull one hair, and the whole body will be affected. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Start from the minute details, start from the places that can be seen. However, it was not easy to destroy the transportation channel. After all, it was a part of the large-scale spirit gathering formation. To destroy it, first, he had to have the attack power to break the large-scale spirit gathering formation. At least, it is much easier than destroying the high-grade Supreme Jade. Lin Feng nodded, but his heart was cold. His previous full-force attack was enough to damage the large-scale spirit gathering formation, but he lacked the strength to continue. He believed that as long as his clone's strength could improve a little, it would be able to break the large-scale spirit gathering formation's defense and destroy the transportation channel. That's it. Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and hope rose in his heart. Ancestral Magus Hall. 12 ancestral Magus statues stood proudly, exuding a domineering aura that stood between heaven and earth. This place was a sacred place that every Magus tribe's expert revered, and they did everything they could to enter. Only the Magus kings had the right to enter. At this time, other than the Magus Emperor Shurjuin, there were two non-Magus tribes experts in the ancestral Magus Hall. One of them was the human Lam Tok Ti. The other person had a pair of bewitching eyes, a pair of golden and silver horns, and was clad in a cyan martial robe. His arms were bare, and spiral patterns flickered on his arms, making him look like a roaring Qilin. If Lin Feng saw him, he would be astonished because he was the strongest Ji clan's expert, the most outstanding genius of the Qilin royal family, and even all the neutral races, Huang Jifu. That day, even Lin Feng had to put in a lot of effort to injure him. Now, Huang Jifu stood up and scathed, but the aura exuding from his eyes seemed to have changed. There was less domineering aura and more cunning and sinister. Congratulations, big brother. Lam Tok Ti smiled and cupped his fists. Congratulations, congratulations. Sure, Jioin put on a fake smile, but there was a hint of jealousy in his eyes. Jia Jia. Huang Jifu laughed evilly. He stretched out his claws and shook his head. I'm still not used to my new body, but whether it's talent or strength, I'm quite satisfied. Ha! Huang Jifu clenched his fists, and a sharp light shone in his eyes. Strength comparable to Di Jiang. No, it's even better. Give me another month, and I'll be able to display 80% of this body's strength. Huang Jifu sneered, full of confidence. But the truth was he wasn't the real Huang Jifu, but the evil demon Kuei Tuesday. After occupying Quikin and Shi by corpse wizard king's bodies, the evil demon Kuei Tu had finally found a suitable body with Lam Tokti's help. It was also the strongest body in the Douling world, second only to Lin Feng, the Emperor of Extremity, Huang Jifu. I can't wait another month. Lam Tokti shook his head. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Oh, Kuei Tu's eyelids twitched, and he looked over. Shi Jiuyin nodded and said solemnly, according to Third Brother's information, Lin Feng's clone is fighting with the demonic beasts, and his main body disappeared not long ago. Third Brother and I analyzed it, and there's a high possibility that Lin Feng ran into some trouble this time, so he abandoned his main body and stayed in the human territory. Kuei Tu nodded slightly and listened carefully. Lin Quan said calmly, therefore, I think that now is the best time to attack. Firstly, Lin Feng is not here, so we can catch the humans and the ancients off guard. Secondly, the Sorcerer Tribe's army is at its peak. Together with the Dead Spirit army that I control, their strength is definitely stronger than the humans and the ancients who are exhausted after fighting with Ji. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Deal a heavy blow to the humans and ancient races. Lam Tokti and Shi Jiuyin looked at each other, obviously coming to a consensus. They only needed Kuei Tu, or Huang Jifu, to give them an answer. The three sides joined forces. After a moment of silence, "Haha, good, it's decided." Kuei Tu laughed heartily, and his eyes shone brightly. Lin Feng gave me such a good body. I was worried about not having a chance to repay him. This time, I'll return it all to him. Yes, together with the interest, we'll return it all at once. Lam Tokti's eyes were filled with hatred, flickering with phosphorescence. The Douling world is ours. Chapter 1697. Lin Feng naturally did not expect the changes in the Douling world. In fact, so what if he had expected it? To him, everything had to give way to the world exterminating demon god. Even if the humans dominated the Douling world, as long as the world exterminating demon god did not die, the rise of the humans was just empty words. It was only a matter of time before they were destroyed. Two things at the same time. On one hand, the main body was trying his best to break through the levels in the serpent-shaped pyramid. On the other hand, the clone was crazily cultivating under the pressure. There were three ways to increase the clone's strength quickly. First, breakthrough in the realm of spear techniques. Lin Feng's spear techniques had just reached the Starry Sky level and was still one level away from the Cloud Spear Divine Lord's level. Second, breakthrough in the 7-inch fist. Although the 7-inch fist could be unleashed, the more profound the 7-inch fist was comprehended, the more powerful it would become. Third, the cultivation of the Panga technique. The stronger the Panga technique, the more power of the heavens and earth he could condense and unleash. At the same time, he could also increase his strength through cultivation. After all, Lin Feng was not far from the 5,600 step of the Panga stairs. As for the other methods, they were somewhat illusory. For example, the creation of spear techniques and the comprehension of Tao. There was no limit to these, and he did not know when he could achieve a breakthrough. As for the strength of his body, the clone was almost saturated. It would be extremely difficult for him to increase it further. Moreover, there was no point in increasing it by a small amount. As he cultivated the Panga technique, he would naturally reach the peak. Even if he was compatible with treasures, the increase in strength was limited. With the clone's current strength, treasures were just icing on the cake. Even the Doomsday Spear was not very useful. The increase of his own strength was the most important. The method that Lin Feng was using now was the second method. 7-inch fist. Although the first level of the 7-inch fist was a simple twofold increase, the most important thing was not the increase, but the application of power. It was not purely the path of strength, nor was it the path of strength. It was the power of the heavens and earth. By using the power of the heavens and earth correctly and combining it perfectly with the soul, one could truly unleash the power of the Tao of the body. Although the first level's increase was small, it was the foundation. The second level's increase was 4 times, but it could combine the power of 2 souls. The power was many times greater than the first level. Of course, the difficulty of comprehending it was not small. Control. The key is in control. Lin Feng's eyes were cold as he focused all of his attention on honing his spear technique. The power of heaven and earth gathered as the Pangu mantra circulated. The power of the 7-inch fist gathered in the illusory spear. Pung! The spear struck out, but the power of heaven and earth completely collapsed. Failure. I still can't do it. Lin Feng withdrew his spear and stood up. He closed his eyes and carefully reviewed his previous movements, looking for where he had made a mistake. From the first level of the 7-inch fist to the second level, he was very clear that the key lay in the word control. After all, to fuse the power of 2 souls, not only did he have to gather twice the amount of heaven and earth energy, he also had to multitask. It was easier said than done. Therefore, he did not forcefully comprehend and practice the second level. Instead, he chose the middle level as a transition. He fused the 7-inch fist into his spear arts. The difficulty was undoubtedly much lower. However, if he succeeded, not only would his attack power increase, but he would also be able to gain a deeper level of control in the 7-inch fist. Even if he could not reach the second level, he estimated that he could at least reach the peak of the first level. Even if it was the first level, there was a difference between 100% power outburst and 50% power outburst. After all, he felt that the power of the 7-inch fist had not reached the true peak of the first level. He believed that this step was the key. Cultivate. Comprehend, then cultivate. Then comprehend, reflect, and apply. Under the extreme pressure, Lin Feng focused 120% of his mind and put all of his attention into practicing his spear arts. He had not seen this scene for a long time. Previously, the strength of his doppelganger increased too quickly, causing his spear arts cultivation to stagnate. However, in reality, Lin Feng's spear arts talent was very strong. Even Sacred Master Cloud Spear was far inferior to Lin Feng's spear arts at Lin Feng's age. And before he cultivated the Panga technique, the reason why Lin Feng's doppelganger could roam the Douling world unhindered and be so strong in single combat was because of his spear. Lin Feng's spear was just like his person, advancing courageously. Chi, pum. The pressure from the world, destroying demon god, pressed down on his shoulders. Lin Feng continued to train his spear arts, imperceptibly adding a sense of decisiveness and slaughter. Coupled with the characteristics of a 7-inch fist, Lin Feng's spear unconsciously added a few more elements, as if he was refining a weapon. Was it a blessing? Was it disaster? Yes, that's the feeling. Gather all the power into one, condense all the power into a single point, and return to the sea. Just like the 7-inch fist. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The world-destroying spear in his hand pierced forward like a tiger's roar. The surrounding space was distorted, like a tornado that engulfed everything. However, the world-destroying spear was nowhere to be seen. Only the glaring starlight at the tip of the spear could make one's soul tremble. Dong! It was abnormally heavy. Boom! The spear energy exploded, and Lin Feng's eyes lit up along with the world-destroying spear's roar. Clang! With an extremely low sound, the world-destroying spear seemed to be emitting smoke. At this moment, the surrounding area became a vacuum, and the terrifying spear energy even pierced through space. Lin Feng stood with the world-destroying spear in his hand, and the dense power of heaven and earth scattered like fireworks. Failed. Indeed, the fusion of the 7-inch fist failed again. But what was lost at the swings was gained at the swings. Spear move. A brand new spear move was comprehended in this protruding area, and a blurry image was drawn out like a painting. Swoosh! Lin Feng remained motionless, and his eyes were tightly shut. His thoughts were completely concentrated in his own world. The spear move just now kept appearing in his mind. From a spear strike to the explosion, from the explosion to the end, the whole process was smooth and smooth. The spear move that he unintentionally displayed seemed to have perfectly merged with the heaven and earth, and the power was so strong that even Lin Feng himself was moved. This was the feeling. All rivers return to the sea. I understand now. To perfectly use the 7-inch fist in the spear move and merge it with the realm of the spear, the simplest way is to use the spear to imitate the 7-inch fist, using the spear as a fist and extending the arm. The most important is the feeling of using the spear, just like just now. Yes, Lin Feng was overjoyed. The comprehension from a continuous practice was getting closer and closer to the breakthrough of the 7-inch fist. This time, the path that seemed to be covered by clouds in front of him lit up, and he could clearly see everything in front of him. It was as if he had walked through it in his memory. With his heart beating, the world-destroying spear in Lin Feng's hand resounded, and he seemed to be in high spirits. Chapter 1698. First level of Demon Emperor Island. Lin Feng stood in front of the faint light circle of the teleportation channel, the illusory spear in his hand, moving with an astonishing momentum. Not far away, Kuei Tianyuan crossed his arms in front of his chest. The word king on his forehead showed his outstanding status. But at this moment, he was like a servant beside Lin Feng. His temperament was very different. In fact, Kuei Tianyuan had already lost his ambition to fight for supremacy. This narrow escape from death and the decline of the demon clan made him understand. Anyway, he had already taken his revenge, so it was easy for him to be idle, and this made his strength increase a little. Many times, both humans and demons were the same. They would enter a dead end, they would be stuck in a dead end, and their obsession would be like a heart demon that trapped them in place, which Emperor Jiang was the best example. Kuei Tianyuan had experienced so much, and at this moment, he was enlightened. However, Lin Feng was obviously still in the circle. Even if he wanted to jump out, he was powerless. The responsibility on his shoulders was weighing him down heavily. Destroy the teleportation channel? When Lin Feng first came out, Kuei Tianyuan was stunned by his whimsical idea. He did not believe at that time. After all, as a demon emperor, he was very clear about the large-scale spirit gathering array and how strong the defense of Demon Emperor Island was. It was connected as one. Even 100 Saint King-level powerhouses would not be able to break it. Now, Lin Feng was alone. How could he do it? But soon, Kuei Tianyuan was shocked. With just the first shot, it caused a violent earthquake on Demon Emperor Island, and the large-scale spirit gathering array had a crack. And now, Lin Feng was using the second shot. There was great hope, including Lin Feng himself. At this moment, he was also filled with confidence. The first shot he was just testing. Although it was combined with the power of the 7-inch fist, he did not use the full power of the 7-inch fist. The power of strength had not been used. But even so, feeling that the teleportation channel was close at hand, Lin Feng was full of confidence. He made the right choice. It seemed like the teleportation channel on every floor was the same, but that was not the case. There was a loss in the transmission of energy, and a large spirit gathering array used an upper-grade spirit jade as its core. Therefore, it was the most powerful part of the array. The closer the transmission channel was to the upper-grade spirit jade, the stronger the defense would be, and the weaker the defense would be. The weakest one that could be seen was the teleportation channel of the first level of the Demon Sovereign Island. I must succeed. Lin Feng circulated the Panga mantra and focused all his attention on a single point. At this moment, he threw all distracting thoughts out of his mind. During this period of time, there had been good news one after another. His avatar had broken through, and his main body had broken through the maze formation of the second stage of the Snake Pyramid. However, he soon fell into the third stage. The snake-shaped pyramid seemed to be endless. Although he felt that there was a high chance that his main body would eventually enter the spatial door, he was afraid that it would take a lot of time. However, the world-exterminating demon god breaking through the restriction was imminent. Therefore, the pressure on the clone was increasing. Clang! Like the strings of a zither being broken, the illusory spear made a sonorous sound. The condensed chi of heaven and earth seemed to have formed a resonance with the chi of heaven and earth in his body. The Panga mantra circulated to the limit, and the chi of heaven and earth in his meridians gathered as fast as lightning, gushing into his strength like a spring. At this moment, 7-inch spear, first style, Lin Feng shouted. The origin of the 7-inch spear was the derivation of the 7-inch fist. Therefore, Lin Feng did not give it any other name. There seemed to be a flash of white light in his body, and his strength exploded with energy. In an instant, Lin Feng's arm expanded, and the astonishing strength was accompanied by the gathering of the chi of heaven and earth, causing the illusory spear to shine brightly. Not far away, Kuei Tianyuan had already widened his eyes in shock. The strength was extremely terrifying. Break for me. Lin Feng made a thunderous strike, as if he had gathered all the strength in his body into the spear. Unparalleled, the rotating airflow tore the space apart, and the terrifying aura accompanied Lin Feng's determination. In an instant, it caused the Demon Emperor Island to shake, and the defense that they were so proud of was broken. The teleportation channel let out a sound like glass shattering, and the large-scale spirit gathering array seemed to have a big hole broken open as it rumbled in an instant. Rumble, rumble, bang! A deafening explosion sounded from the teleportation channel. The explosion of energy affected the entire Demon Emperor Island, and the entire Demon Emperor Island shook violently, as if a pillar that reached the heavens was shattered. Cracks appeared from the bottom and slowly spread upwards. Crack, crack! The shattering sound kept ringing in their ears, and accompanied by the shaking of the earth, the entire Demon Emperor Island seemed to have collapsed in an instant. It broke. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled, but he remained indifferent. When this moment really happened, he did not feel much, as if it was a matter of course. Looking at the collapse of the teleportation channel, which caused the Demon Emperor Island to change continuously, Lin Feng was as calm as still water, because these were not of much use. What he really wanted to see was, would the large-scale spirit gathering array affect the entire Demon Emperor Island? Would the aura of death in the cemetery be affected? Otherwise, what he did would be useless. Boom! Rumble! Bang! No! Rumble! Like a huge building collapsing, the Demon Emperor Island shook wave after wave. The 7 islands that seemed to be connected by the teleportation channel were now separated. Even so, the 7 islands were still standing and were not destroyed. They were not part of the large-scale spirit gathering array, and were only connected by the teleportation channel. Wah! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The chi of heaven and earth had always been firmly connected to the large-scale spirit gathering array, and his suspended heart thumped loudly. Just as he had calculated before, the entire large-scale spirit gathering array had merged into one, perfect and flawless. It was like a huge conical pyramid, and the high-grade supreme jade was the top of the pyramid, and the teleportation channel was the only pillar in the center. Now, the pillar had collapsed. Like a tall building collapsing, the circulation of the entire large-scale spirit gathering array slowly stopped. The cycle was also broken. Ha! Laughing heartily, Lin Feng's laughter had a cathartic and uncontrollable joy. That feeling was as if the extreme pressure on his shoulders had been released, and he felt much more relaxed. Even Kuei Tianyuan smiled. Both Lin Feng and Kuei Tianyuan knew very well what the broken cycle of the large-scale spirit gathering array meant. The aura of death could no longer circulate. With the passage of time, it would reduce bit by bit until nothing was left. Even if the cemetery itself could produce the aura of death, without the support of endless spiritual energy, the meager amount that was born naturally was not enough to fill the gaps between the teeth of the demon god of destruction. The dagger that had been hanging in the air all this time seemed to have disappeared all of a sudden. Let's go. Lin Feng did not stop. He did not even have time to recover the chi of heaven and earth and went straight to the cemetery. He could not wait to see the results. The divine dominion, the divine territory, which had a small-scale spirit gathering array, had now become the base camp of humans. Ever since the battle with the extreme demon, the small-scale spirit gathering array was overflowing with spiritual energy as if it was charged. StarCraft-level human elites entered one after another, and it did not take long for them to break through smoothly and become saint-level powerhouses. Unlike the demon clan, humans were quite outstanding in the aspect of comprehension. This was especially true for the elite experts of the human race. Their comprehension was even more extraordinary. The stronger their comprehension, the deeper their understanding of the Tao. The reason why humans could not rise and develop was ultimately due to the environment and timing. They had always been suppressed by the shamans and demons. Although they occupied a large area of land and were scattered in every corner, there were some barren lands with little spiritual energy. Now, the situation was very different. In less than half a year, the strength of humans had not only recovered to the peak before the battle, but also increased by as much as 50%. The increase in saint-level powerhouses made humans more confident. Unfortunately, there were still not enough Saint King-level powerhouses. After all, humans had too little time to develop. But it was completely conceivable that if humans could have 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years of development, they would definitely be comparable to the shamans and demons at their peak. Unfortunately, things did not go according to plan. Just as the human powerhouses were celebrating the end of the war of the shamans and demons, the decline of the demon race, and the bright future of humans, a sudden piece of news shocked every human powerhouse. Then it was followed by intense anger. Why is it like this? Damn it, the shamans are too shameless. They can't beat the demon race, so they hide in their nest. We beat the demon race away, and they won a great victory. The shamans actually chose this time to start the war and enjoy the fruits of our labor. Fight these bastards to the death. Bah, they say we humans are despicable, but they are 10 times, 100 times more despicable and shameless than us. They were filled with righteous indignation and rage. Almost all the Saint King-level human powerhouses had gathered in the main hall, and they were all fuming with anger. The current human powerhouses were no longer the cowards who bowed to the shamans and did not dare to fight back after being slapped in the face. More than half of the Saint King-level human powerhouses were the new generation of powerhouses, and they were all carefully nurtured by Lin Feng. Every one of them was a newborn calf that was not afraid of a tiger. Even when facing a desperate situation in the battle against Ji, they did not retreat, let alone now. Let's fight. Ever since Lin Feng became the human empress, the humans were no longer afraid of anyone. The shamans were just clowns who only knew how to seek luck and avoid danger. They bullied the weak and feared the strong. What was that? Shun, give the order. Yes, we are not cowards. Kill every single one of the shamans. Let them see how powerful we humans are. The main battle cry was loud, and the battle intent was strong. Everyone in the hall looked at Shun. Since Lin Feng was not here, Shun, who was highly respected, had become the backbone of the human race. However, at this moment, Shun frowned and didn't say a word. Obviously, he was afraid of this sudden situation. Shun's silence caused the human powerhouses to discuss among themselves. They did not know what was going on. With such high morale and Lin Feng holding the fort, the ancient tribe alliance did not need to be afraid of the shamans. They had absolute confidence in winning the battle. However, why was Shun frowning? The situation is not as optimistic as you think it is. Qian Lianhuang stood out before Shun said anything. Her beautiful face was filled with charm. Emperor Lin is in some trouble now. I'm afraid he won't be able to return in a short time. Moreover, the ancient tribe might not help us. Chapter 1699. His words thundered like thunder. What did he mean? Emperor Lin wouldn't be able to return anytime soon? Why would the ancient race alliance suddenly change their mind? Everyone was puzzled as they looked at each other. Their battle intent was instantly extinguished as though a bucket of cold water had been poured over them. Everyone looked at Thousand Love Emperor and his Shun with questions in their eyes, waiting for their answers. What Thousand Love Emperor said is true. Emperor Lin has indeed encountered some trouble. Shun hesitated, but he did not mention the world-exterminating Archdevil God. After all, this matter had not been confirmed yet, and there was no need to cause unnecessary panic. He won't be able to return anytime soon. However, he will return in 8 to 10 days, or a few months. Although Shun wasn't sure himself, he had to say this to appease everyone. Sure enough, everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they heard Shun's words. In their hearts, Lin Feng was the sky. He was everything. He was their idol and the symbol of their spirit. They firmly believed that under Lin Feng's leadership, there was no enemy they couldn't deal with. The demonic beast race, the extreme devil race, and the sorcerer race were the same. As long as Lin Feng was there, they had the strength to fight any powerful enemy. As for the ancient race, Shun paused for a second, then continued. I've already contacted deity's Templar Master Gu Sheng, but he hasn't replied yet. There was a hint of helplessness in his words. After the war ended, the alliance between the humans and the ancient race only existed in name. Even though he had tried to form an alliance with the ancient race several times, he had been rejected every time. The ancient race was indifferent to fame and fortune. Moreover, the ancient race had suffered great losses in the war between the sorcerer race and the demon beast race. The ancient race was already satisfied with getting back the 7 ancient regions. Lin Feng had planned to negotiate with Gu Sheng, but he had missed the opportunity to enter the demonic beast race's territory. And now, according to the news, Sorcerer Emperor Shi Jiuyin has personally entered the ancient regions to apologize to the ancient race. Thousand Love Emperor's eyes burned with anger. Moreover, he promised the ancient race that as long as the ancient race doesn't participate in the war, the sorcerer race will form a permanent alliance with the ancient race to establish a new order in the Doling world, including the God domain. At that time, everything will be returned to the ancient race. Boom! The deity's Templar Master. This is too shameless, using other people's good points to flatter them. The witch tribe is so shameless. How can the ancient race do this? Angry voices rang out continuously. Most of them were disdainful and angry at the despicable actions of the sorcerer tribe, while some of them were complaining about the ancient tribe. However, at this moment, half of the human powerhouses were in deep silence. This was because the current situation was indeed very unfavorable for the human side. Although the human side was strong, if they lost the alliance of the ancient race, their combat power would drop by more than 60 to 70%. Most importantly, right now, their Emperor Lin wasn't here. Whether it was their battle prowess or their morale, the human powerhouses couldn't help but waver. Hesitation flashed across their faces. They knew very well that if the humans lost their 2 strongest weapons, they would not be able to defeat the shamans, who had been enduring for a long time. Their chances of winning would be slim. One must know that the sorcerer tribe was a powerful existence that was comparable to the demon tribe. Especially in the great war between the sorcerer and the demon tribe, the sorcerer tribe did not lose much of its combat power. Not only the ordinary Saint Kings, but even Shun, Qian Lian Huang, Lin Xiaotian, and the others had solemn expressions as they felt extremely uneasy. The preparations and plans of the wizard tribe had already forced the humans to the edge of a cliff. How could the humans get through this difficult situation? At this moment, whoosh! A faint light flashed across the deity's Templar Master. All the human powerhouses immediately looked over, including Shun and Qian Lianhuang. When they saw the person who had come, they were shocked and revealed a look of surprise. The person who had come was extremely handsome. He was dressed in a simple and elegant martial attire. His long hair fluttered in the wind, reflecting his extreme beauty. As he walked, he exuded an aura of nobility and was extremely beautiful. It was Gu Sheng. With his hands behind his back, he had a faint smile on his face. Gu Sheng's sudden arrival caused the atmosphere in the deity's Templar Master to freeze in an instant. Only the sound of light footsteps and the heavy breathing of the human powerhouses could be heard. Outside the cemetery, Lin Feng's eyes sparkled as he stared at the area that was enveloped by the thick death aura. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Very good. Although the death aura is still thick, it has decreased by a portion. Lin Feng's sensing ability was quite outstanding. He could sense whether the death aura was thick or not. Just as he had predicted, the stop of the large-scale spirit-gathering array would affect the entire cemetery. Just as he had expected. Clap! Lin Feng clenched his fists. His confidence was boosted. The weakening of the death aura was fatal to the world-destroying demon god. Once the energy of the death aura in the cemetery was exhausted, the world-destroying demon god would not be able to break through the restriction. He would most likely fall into an eternal slumber, like a machine that had lost its energy. If he could find a way to seal this area, the world-destroying demon god would never be able to rise again. Everything depended on effort. An opportunity had appeared in front of him. From the initial helplessness to the present moment, the door of hope had been opened step by step. Indeed, there was always a way out. Let's go in and take a look. Lin Feng moved lightly and entered the cemetery. He was in a good mood. Even so, Lin Feng was still cautious. As he felt the surrounding death aura decreasing, he could not hide his joy. He could feel the disappearance of the death aura at every moment, which meant that the world-destroying demon god's food was decreasing. Let's work harder. Lin Feng would not let go of such a great opportunity. Absorbing the shield of truth was equivalent to snatching food from the tiger's mouth. However, it did not matter. The tiger in the cemetery was confined in the cage and could not come out at all. The death aura entered the shield of truth and was instantly absorbed by the undead expert. Part of it was converted into energy to repair itself. Then, it continued to absorb the death aura, forming a stable cycle. However, it was still far from enough. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He was moved. The cycle of death energy and spiritual energy between the cemetery and Demon Emperor Island was indeed broken. However, there was still quite a lot of death energy in the entire cemetery. How much could the shield of truth consume? Even if he used the chi of heaven and earth to consume it, it would only be a drop in the ocean. If he wanted to stop the world-destroying demon god, he had to be fast. He had to be faster than him. That's right. The cycle is broken. However, just like Demon Emperor Island, the absence of a transmission channel does not mean that Demon Emperor Island is destroyed. It's the same for the cemetery. It has lost the supply of spiritual energy and the complete cycle. However, the cemetery is still a cemetery. It's a whole. Lin Feng was shocked. If I want to consume the death aura as quickly as possible, I have to destroy this whole entity and make it lose its own magnetic field. Then, the cemetery will be able to open the sealed door and integrate into the surrounding environment. Lin Feng nodded. His thoughts were already very clear. Right now, the cemetery was like a sealed fortress. However, if he could destroy this fortress, everything in the fortress would be exposed. Simply speaking, the death aura could spread out and come into contact with the spiritual energy of the outside world. His strength was indeed limited. However, the spiritual energy of the outside world was endless. The strength of the heavens was the strongest. Swish! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He turned around and left. He did not know where the gap in the cemetery was. However, as for how to destroy it, he already had a clue. Looking at the entire cemetery, where's the thickest death aura? Where the world-exterminating demon god was. That was the center of the cemetery. It was like the core of an array. With it, as the center, the death aura spread out in a circle. The further it went, the thinner it became. However, there was only one place that was very special and did not follow this rule. Clearly, it was also special. That was the entrance. At the entrance of the cemetery. That was the area covered by the thick death aura. It was the place he had forcefully entered. The first time he entered, the uniqueness was not completely apparent. However, the second time he entered, it was already very obvious. If the center of the cemetery was the core, then it was the axle. It was a passage. Because it was connected to the axle of a large-scale spirit gathering array, the death aura there would be much thicker than other places. Just like the existence of the door. The stronger the place, the weaker it was. Could it be broken? The answer was obvious. Lin Feng, whose strength had reached a new level, could even break a large-scale spirit gathering array, let alone a mere cemetery's magnetic field. After all, Lin Feng did not have to destroy the entire cemetery. He only had to open a hole. For the current Lin Feng, it was a piece of cake. Pong, boom, rumble. Lin Feng crazily destroyed. The thick death aura at the entrance of the cemetery was either consumed or dispersed. With the entrance as a passage, the death aura in the cemetery slowly flowed out like a spring. As Lin Feng continued to destroy, the speed at which the death aura gushed out also gradually increased. Not far away, Kuei Tianyuan was floating in the air, watching the show. Lin Feng ignored him and continued to destroy the entrance. It was not an exaggeration to say that the cemetery's entrance was riddled with holes. It was as dense as a beehive. Soon, the dense beehive-like invisible barrier shattered. The feeling of the magnetic field instantly disappeared. Done. Lin Feng lightly exhaled. The illusory spear in his hand flashed with a faint light and disappeared. Previously, he had already used up the power of heaven and earth to break the passage. Now, he had attacked again and again without caring about the losses. He had used up all the remaining power of heaven and earth in his body. Turning his head, Lin Feng looked at Kuei Tianyuan. The latter's face was filled with surprise and joy. Kuei Tianyuan actually had quite a lot of hatred for the world-exterminating demon god. Blood Tiger Emperor, please help me keep an eye on it, Lin Feng said. If there are any abnormalities, inform me immediately. I will temporarily return to Demon Emperor Island. No problem. Kuei Tianyuan simply nodded. It was just a small matter. Lin Feng nodded and did not say anything courteous. Although the large-scale spirit gathering array on Demon Emperor Island had been destroyed, it was the same for Demon Emperor Island. The power of heaven and earth here was much denser. In addition, the distance was not far, and they would arrive in a short while. Lin Feng naturally knew how to calculate. Now, he had to seize every minute. Even though the situation seemed to be in his favor, Lin Feng still felt some fear in his heart. After all, he had not truly sealed the world-exterminating demon god. There were still many variables. Chapter 1700. Divine Palace. Every human expert stared at the handsome man in front of them, but they couldn't see anything from his calm and collected steps. The only thing they knew was that Gu Sheng had not only recovered from his injuries, but he seemed to be stronger than before. His sudden appearance was like a comet sweeping across the sky. Although there were countless sage, king-level human experts gathered here, he was the only one who caught everyone's attention. The new Divine Palace Master, Gu Sheng. He was a super genius that the ancient race had placed high hopes on since he was young. He was the successor of the Divine Palace Master and the disciple of the ancient gods. He was given the surname Gu. His existence was like a bright star. He was supposed to be the brightest star, the hope of the ancient race. However, Lin Feng's appearance disrupted everything. Not only did Gu Sheng overshadow his brilliance, but he also suffered continuous setbacks. Coupled with the changes in the ancient race, such a peerless genius had encountered unprecedented hardships. Even if he was not killed, he would be crushed by the pressure. He would lose his arrogance and his drive. However, a genius was still a genius. Gu Sheng had truly grown up through the hardships. He was now fully deserving of the title of Emperor of the ancient race. Shun. Gu Sheng walked in front of Shun and greeted him with a smile. It was not inappropriate to address him as an equal. I didn't know that the ancient emperor was here. Pardon me for not going out to meet you. Shun also smiled and bowed his head slightly. In a sense, his status was slightly lower than Gusheng's. It was only right for him to be polite. However, at this moment, there was an invisible meaning in his words, causing Gusheng to burst into laughter. I haven't seen you for a few months. When did you become so distant? Gusheng asked. He rolled his eyes and could not help but smile. Is it because I didn't reply to your message? Gusheng shrugged and smiled. Didn't I come here personally? Shun smiled. Ancient Emperor, you are overthinking. Gusheng smiled and said, It doesn't matter if you're overthinking or not. This matter is indeed not a small matter. Gusheng's expression turned serious. A glint flashed across his eyes, especially the sudden visit of the new Sorcerer Emperor. He humbled himself and apologized. This has surprised and caught all of our masters off guard. Bang! Like a cannonball exploding, the expressions of all the human experts changed. These words came out of Gusheng's mouth with certainty. It was not simply a piece of news, but a fact. The shaman tribe was indeed unscrupulous in order to achieve their goals. The shaman tribe, who had always been proud and arrogant, had actually abandoned their dignity to seek peace. This was something that was impossible to see under the leadership of the Shaman Emperor Jiang, but the sorcerer race under Shi Jiuyin's rule had done so. It didn't mean that Shi Jiuyin's leadership ability was better than which Emperor Jiang, but from a certain point of view, although Shi Jiuyin's actions were ruthless, they were effective, hitting the ancient race's weak spot. What the ancient race valued the most was their face and self-respect. Even though they had fought against the demon clan together with the human alliance, and even won a great victory, that was then and this is now. During the war, there would not be many differences between the two sides because their goals were clear. However, after the war, there would be many people who wanted to settle scores. At that time, the humans had indeed reaped many benefits from the aboriginals. To the ancient race, the deity realm wasn't just a holy land. It was also a humiliation that was forcefully taken away by the humans. Now, as long as the ancient tribe agreed to the sorcerer tribe's conditions, which are not even conditions, they would be able to regain their divine territory and face. Why not? However, why did Gusheng come personally? Demonstrate? Or was it a provocation? After all, Shun was very experienced. From Gusheng's words, he quickly understood. He said softly, It seems like the ancient emperor still cares about the old friendship. If I'm not wrong, the ancient emperor has not agreed to the sorcerer race's conditions yet. He wants to see how much sincerity we humans can offer, or how much bargaining chip. As soon as he said that, everyone's hearts sank. Shun's words were simple and clear. No matter how they looked at it, Gusheng's intentions were the same. From his position, it was understandable for him to do so. Gusheng was already extremely benevolent to come and discuss this matter with the humans on account of their old friendship. Gusheng smiled faintly and placed his hands behind his back. He neither denied nor admitted. The scene was completely silent. Shun's expression kept changing. At this moment, thousands of thoughts were running through his mind. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Lin Feng wasn't around, so he had to make the decisions. Every word he said could affect the direction of the upcoming war. However, he seemed to have no other choice. Gusheng's intentions were very clear. He was waiting for the humans to return the divine realm. This way, everyone could work together again to fight against the sorcerer race. If he didn't have such intentions, Gusheng didn't need to come at all. As long as he agreed to the sorcerer race's conditions, he could reap the benefits. To be able to do this, the ancient clan was indeed very good. However, at this moment, Shun's mouth seemed to have been sewn shut by a needle. He opened his mouth for a long time, but couldn't say anything. In terms of boldness and decisiveness, he was much weaker than Lin Feng. To put it nicely, he was thoughtful and cautious. To put it bluntly, he was a little indecisive. Suddenly, ha, 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 hearty laughter resounded in the temple, echoing endlessly. The human experts looked at Gusheng in shock. They were confused by his sudden laughter and didn't know what he meant. Soon, many human experts looked unhappy. This laughter was like silent mockery. It It was like needles piercing into their hearts. It was extremely embarrassing. However, the laughter suddenly stopped. Gu Sheng's eyes lit up. He swept his gaze across the human experts and looked straight at Shan. Don't worry. I, Gu Sheng, am not a two-faced person. My clan is not a flatterer. That day, the sorcerer race abandoned my clan like grass. The ancient clan will never forget such humiliation. Bring a bramble and ask for punishment? Such a childish method. Do you really think that the ancient clan is a 3-year-old child who can be fooled by you? Gu Sheng's words were generous and firm. Pang Rant's aura was firm. Today, I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm here on behalf of the ancient clan. I hope to form a permanent alliance with the humans. Fight against the sorcerer race together. Gu Sheng stood proudly, his eyes bright. His body, his shadow, and his aura had shocked all the human experts at this moment. Shun's face flushed red. He didn't know what to say for a moment. He nodded, all right. There was a hint of shame in his eyes, but more of it was surprise and touched. Shun said seriously, we humans will remember the kindness of the ancient clan. When the war ends, we will not treat our alliance unfairly. Let's help each other and fight against the sorcerer race together. Fight against the sorcerer race together. All right, shouts rang out. Strong fighting spirit bloomed on the faces of the human experts. They couldn't hide their excitement. Gu Sheng and Shun's fists collided. Their eyes were burning. Without much words, they had already established a consensus. They worked together and formed an alliance with blood. Fight against the sorcerer race together. Demon Emperor Island. Whoosh! Dense chi of heaven and earth gathered from all directions and flowed into Lin Feng's body. It was so dense that it was like a thick fog. Lin Feng's breathing was calm and long. Although the recovery rate of the chi of heaven and earth was great, it was still very fast in the center of a large-scale spirit-gathering formation. Perhaps it would be difficult to have such rich chi of heaven and earth in the future, but at least there was no need to worry now. As for the future, let's talk about it later. What a sorcerer race! Sorcerer Emperor Shi Jiuyin. We must guard against him. Although Lin Feng was on the Demon Emperor Island, he had never let go of the human race. Although his main body was here, he had left wing in the human territory. Lin Feng had spared no effort to nurture his most capable assistant and companion. Wing had also lived up to his expectations, breaking through to Saint King Realm not long ago. Although he was only a low-level Saint King Realm expert, Wing's battle prowess was incomparably terrifying. When he learned that the sorcerer race was on the verge of making a move, how could Lin Feng not have a backup plan? Not long after he learned that Shi Jiuyin was visiting the ancient race, Lin Feng sent Wing to the ancient region to have a discussion with Gu Sheng. One wrong move, and the whole game was lost. The war had yet to end, so he had to be on guard. Facts had proven that Lin Feng's caution was correct. It was also because of his forceful intervention that Gu Sheng had made up his mind to cooperate with the human race. Using both soft and hard methods, Lin Feng would not show mercy to the sorcerer race. Gu Sheng's aura in the deity's Templar had subdued all the human experts, but in front of Lin Feng, he had suffered a great loss. How could the ancient race help the human race for no reason? There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. With Wing holding the fort and Gu Sheng as the strongest battle force, I believe that no matter how strong the sorcerer race is, they won't be able to gain too much advantage over the human race and the ancient race in a short time. After I resolve this crisis, I will settle the score with the sorcerer race. Killing intent rose in Lin Feng's heart. At this critical juncture, the sorcerer race's rise to power and war was equivalent to stabbing him in the back. How could he tolerate this? Originally, he had not planned to fight the sorcerer race in a short time. After all, even though Ji Ling had suffered a crushing defeat, the heavenly spirit race's forces were still strong and stable like a rock. Not to mention, Ji Ling had decisively retreated in that battle. Although his vitality had been damaged, it had not harmed his foundation. Once the war between the human race and the sorcerer race broke out, the heavenly spirit race would be the one to gain the most. The first great Magi-Demon War was an example. However, right now, the sorcerer race was already stepping on his face. No matter how unwilling he could not take this lying down. The battle against the sorcerer race was unavoidable. Even if the human race's vitality is greatly damaged, we can just retreat to the endless ocean. Lin Feng thought to himself. He had already made a full plan. The decline of the demon race was unavoidable. If the human race retreated to the endless ocean to develop, with him overseeing it, they would definitely be able to replace the demon race and slowly rise up. Although the heavenly spirit race was strong, as long as he was around, it would not dare to act rashly. There was nothing to be afraid of. The future was unpredictable. As long as he was strong enough, he would be able to deal with whatever came his way. Back then, he had never been afraid, let alone now. Lin Feng took a deep breath, his heart resolute. The recovery speed of the heaven and earth chi was extremely fast, and it had already recovered to about 80%. It would not be long before it could recover its battle strength. Lin Feng's expression suddenly changed. He opened his eyes, and a bright light flashed in them. As he sensed it, a familiar figure was rushing over from afar. He seemed to be a little flustered. It was the Blood Tiger Emperor, Kuei Tianyuan. Did something happen? Chapter 17:01. Swoosh. Lin Feng stood up abruptly. Previously, when he asked Kuei Tianyuan to help him keep an eye on the cemetery, he did not pay too much attention to it. After all, in his opinion, the world-destroying demon god still needed a long time to break the restriction, and he only needed a short time to recover the chi of heaven and earth. What problem could there be? However, right now, the Blood Tiger Emperor Kuei Tianyuan was rushing over in a hurry. Obviously, something was wrong. What happened? Lin Feng's figure flashed, and before Kuei Tianyuan could arrive, he had already rushed over. Bang! Kuei Tianyuan hurriedly stopped his body. His eyes flashed with shock as he spoke in a slightly flustered manner. There's a change in the cemetery. Just as these 4 words were spoken, Lin Feng's heart sank. In an instant, it was as if a thunderbolt had exploded as he sped forward. There was no need to ask, and there was no need to think. Seeing with one's own eyes was the best way to deal with it. Buzz. Space seemed to be torn apart. Lin Feng's burst of speed had faintly exceeded the limit, causing a slight fluctuation in space. However, Lin Feng did not care so much at this moment. His eyes shot out a burning light, and his heart was filled with anxiety. He could not wait to enter the cemetery immediately to see what was going on. What exactly had happened? Could it be that the world-destroying demon god had broken the restriction? Impossible. Lin Feng instantly rejected it. No matter how he looked at it, it was impossible for the world-destroying demon god to escape in such a short time. If it really broke the restriction, the Blood Tiger Emperor Kuei Tianyuan probably would not even have the qualifications to escape. But if that was not the case, then what happened? Swoosh! Lin Feng's figure flashed, leaving behind afterimages. Demon Emperor Island was not very far from the cemetery, and Lin Feng arrived in the blink of an eye. Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he pursed his lips tightly. Before reaching the cemetery, he could already feel the fluctuation of Pang Rant's aura, which was not there before. It was a domineering aura that devoured the heavens and the earth. Although the death aura was constantly leaking out, a large part of it was also sucked into the cemetery like a whale swallowing seawater. Oh no! Lin Feng's expression changed. Without a doubt, the domineering aura of Pang Ran must have come from the world-exterminating demon god. Although he did not know what happened during this period of time, it was obvious that the world-exterminating demon god seemed to be getting closer and closer to breaking the restriction. His original plan seemed to have failed. Damn it! Lin Feng clenched his teeth and rushed into the cemetery. He had put in so much effort and finally managed to cut off the source of the death aura in the cemetery. Could it be that he was still a step too late and all his efforts were in vain? Lin Feng's eyes were bloodshot, and his entire body trembled slightly. Thinking of the terrifying disaster that was about to happen, he felt as if a mountain was pressing down on his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. No, he could not let the world-destroying demon god escape, even if he had to pay with his life. Cheat! Lin Feng burst forth with lightning speed, quickly passing through the outer area of the cemetery and entering the inner area where the tombstones were. CC. The absorption of the death aura here was more intense than the outer area. The dense death aura seemed to be pulled by strings and headed straight to the central area. Knowing that it was done by the world-destroying demon god, there was no doubt that he had to stop it. In fact, he could not stop it anyway. Lin Feng's expression was solemn, and the illusory spear appeared in his hand, looking ferocious. Get ready for battle. This was a battle that he could not escape from. Boom! Lin Feng entered as if he had broken through a door. The moment he entered the central area of the cemetery, he could see everything clearly. Sizzle, sizzle. A layer of pitch-black light flashed around the body of the world-destroying demon god. It was like the color of metal, which was something that he had never seen before. The world-destroying demon god's body did not change much, but the eruption of his aura was much more terrifying than before. Bang, bang, bang. Again and again, he attacked the restriction. The world-destroying demon god even turned a blind eye to Lin Feng's arrival. Now, all his attention was focused on the restriction. Everything he did was to break the restriction. He wanted freedom. The restriction's energy is depleting so quickly. Lin Feng's heart sank, and his expression turned ugly. Compared to the restriction that he had seen previously, it was now like a willow catkin in the wind. There was no aura at all, and it was completely suppressed by the world-destroying demon god. Breaking it seemed like it was only a matter of time. Roar! Roar! The world-destroying demon god was in a frenzy. Thick death aura surged out crazily, and at the same time, endless death aura was absorbed by him. The entire ground shook continuously, as if a natural disaster had broken out. Great crisis. World-destroying demon god. Indeed, I cannot underestimate him. Even if he has just gained sentience, his instincts are still there. The essence of 3,000 demon gods is indeed extraordinary. Lin Feng was secretly shocked. Although he did not know what kind of move the world-destroying demon god had used, it seemed to be a kind of berserk transformation of the demon clan, which increased his strength in a short period of time. The world-destroying demon god should have sensed the loss of death aura, which was why he suddenly erupted with such power. Calm down. Lin Feng clenched his fists tightly with a solemn expression. The more critical the situation was, the more he could not panic. The more anxious he was, the more chaotic he would be. Yes, the move that he used must have extremely strong repercussions, Lin Feng said to himself. He was certain in his heart. It was not difficult to guess. The move could erupt with such powerful energy. If there were no aftereffects, the world-destroying demon god would have used it long ago. It had similar characteristics to Berserk. It was not only the ability, but also the aftereffects. Weakness. After using it, his strength would be greatly reduced. It was more than 90% likely. But what could he do? Wait for him to break the restriction and have a decisive battle with him? Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he immediately rejected the idea. Such a method of waiting for him was extremely risky. Firstly, he did not know how strong the world-destroying demon god would be after the restriction was broken. Secondly, even if the world-destroying demon god was in a weakened state, would he be able to defeat him? The possibility did not seem high. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. After all, his strength was not on the same level as the world-destroying demon god. But if he did not do that, what could he do now? Cold sweat broke out on Lin Feng's forehead. Right now, he was in the most critical situation. Suddenly, Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he saw the reaction of a shield of truth. He gently moved it, and the surrounding aura of death that was being absorbed by the world-destroying demon god like a tornado was absorbed by the shield of truth. It was like the only oasis in the desert. Whoosh! Lin Feng looked at the world-destroying demon god, and a thought flashed through his mind. Yes, an ability similar to Berserk. The stronger the attack, the stronger the strength, and the more aura of death it would consume. He had never seen the world-destroying demon god absorb the aura of death like this before. Obviously, this was the source of his Berserk state. Thinking of this, Lin Feng immediately came up with a plan. He stomped on the ground and ran quickly. Circle. Lin Feng went in circles around the world-destroying demon god. The deathly aura was being absorbed like a spinning top. Although the devouring ability of the world-destroying demon god was extremely strong, any deathly aura that got close to the shield of truth would be absorbed by it. Wherever Lin Feng passed, the deathly aura would be annihilated and disappear without a trace. Fast and accurate. The central area of the cemetery was only so big, and Lin Feng's terrifying speed made it easy for the shield of truth to absorb the aura of death. It had its own devouring ability. In an instant, more than half of the aura of death that was gushing into the world-destroying demon god disappeared. Roar. The world-destroying demon god soon found the culprit, and his beast-like eyes were filled with rage. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Blessings never came in pairs, and misfortunes never came alone. The terrifying pressure once again descended like a nightmare. He was no stranger to it, as he had already endured the countless attacks of the world-destroying demon god when he entered the cemetery. The first time, he used the 7-inch fist to block it, but later he realized that there was no need to waste the power of heaven and earth. The world-destroying demon god's attack was weakened by the restriction and consumed by the distance, so it could not break through the defense of the Pango armor. Only the impact could not be dissipated. However, such damage could not cause any substantial damage to the doppelganger, who had a strong physical body. Apart from pain, there was nothing else. With the recovery ability of the doppelganger, he was safe and sound. But this time, 7-inch spear, the first move, Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and the illusory spear unleashed an extremely strong power. With the circulation of the Panga technique and the power of heaven and earth, the power of the 7-inch fist was perfectly integrated into the illusory spear. Facing the world-destroying demon god, although he was confident, he did not dare to be careless. After all, he did not know where the limit of the Pango armor was. Bang! As if his chest was struck by lightning, Lin Feng groaned and instantly retreated. Even so, it did not hinder the shield of truth from absorbing the deathly aura. Lin Feng gritted his teeth and moved his numb right hand. The illusory spear that had disappeared appeared again. With the consumption of the power of heaven and earth and the sudden dissipation of the illusory spear, the remaining power was still blocked by the Pango armor. Very strong, Lin Feng calculated in his mind. The power of the world-destroying demon god's attack was at least 5 times stronger than before. At least, as for whether this was his strongest power, there was no way to know. But, obviously, he could still block it. Again, Lin Feng's undulating chest quickly calmed down. His body paused, and he took a step forward, attacking again. Wherever the shield of truth passed, the deathly aura was absorbed. The defense of the Pango armor strengthened his confidence. It was strong enough. The next time he blocked it, he could even reduce the consumption of the power of heaven and earth. Bit by bit, bang, bang, bang. Lin Feng was constantly pushed back, but like a wave, he attacked again and again. This made the world-destroying demon god flustered and exasperated. His eyes were filled with blood-red light. One had to know that every attack he made consumed his power, and it was not consumed on the restriction. If he attacked this human, he would not have time to attack the restriction. But if he did not attack this human would abominably absorb the energy he relied on to survive. Most importantly, the energy he valued was decreasing bit by bit. Roar! Roaring into the sky, the world-destroying demon god went crazy. The pitch-black light around his body instantly turned purple and became more and more intense. The terrifying power increased again. Lin Feng, who was scurrying away, suddenly changed his expression. It can't be. He still had not reached the end. Chapter 1702. Lin Feng was completely shocked, but in the next moment, Lin Feng made a choice without hesitation. His body suddenly retreated. Lin Feng's expression turned serious. His intuition told him that danger. It was extremely dangerous. In an instant, a terrifying energy descended from the sky. Even though Lin Feng had put some distance between himself and the enemy, the glaring light was still scorching hot. The dense death energy was like a ball of fire that wanted to burn him into ashes. The attack speed was extremely fast. Physical strength explode. Lin Feng was extremely decisive. He activated the Panga mantra and gathered it in his physical strength. The rich chi of heaven and earth surged into his physical strength. Instantly, it bloomed with dazzling light. White light spots condensed on the illusory spear and collided with the glaring light at lightning speed. Boom! It was like the collision of two giant stars, shocking the world. The violent explosion of energy tore the entire cemetery apart. The surrounding aura of death disappeared. The torn space crazily devoured the aura of death. A huge halo enveloped the land. No one knew what the result of this collision would be. Would Lin Feng die? Puff! Coughing out a mouthful of blood, Lin Feng clenched his teeth and struggled to stand up shakily. The Pango armor bust. Lin Feng's breathing was rapid. His chest heaved up and down. His aura had weakened a lot, but he was still standing. He was only injured but not dead. Looking ahead, Lin Feng's face alternated between green and white. He was slightly shocked. He was still frozen at that moment. Just a little bit more, and he would have died. What a terrifying power. Lin Feng was shocked. He had just taken a stroll in front of the gates of hell. The terrifying force broke through his strongest attack and even penetrated the Pango armor. If he hadn't dodged in time and retreated a little before the world-destroying demon god exploded, this terrifying attack would have taken his life. No matter how strong the Pango armor was, it couldn't protect him. Stroking the Pango armor, Lin Feng felt lucky. The defensive power of the Pango armor was quite outstanding. Although it was not compatible with the armor and was not enhanced by the power of the world, its defensive power was still very strong. Previously, he had been slightly disappointed when he obtained it. But now, he had relied on it to save him time and time again. There is always a way out. Phew! Inhale. After adjusting his breathing, Lin Feng's slightly pale face became a little rosy. His strong physique gave his clone an extremely strong recovery ability. Even in the current situation, his body recovered quite a bit in the blink of an eye. His damaged skin was repaired, and his cells were constantly dividing and recombining. Although his body had not recovered to 100%, it was recovering bit by bit. Huh! Lin Feng laughed loudly. That feeling was extremely comfortable. The World Annihilation Demon God's attack just now was definitely his strongest performance, but it still couldn't do anything to him. He had not been killed, nor had he suffered any fundamental damage. Although the situation looked rather pathetic, the one who had suffered the real loss was the world-destroying demon god, not him. He had expended so much energy, but it was useless. Now, even if the aura of death was reduced, it was still better. Moreover, the World Annihilation Demon God's attack just now had obviously taken a huge toll on his body. Otherwise, he would not have kept this trump card for so long. Wah! Lin Feng was very bold. If an ordinary martial art practitioner had escaped from death, they would definitely be fearful. However, Lin Feng did not hesitate at all. He dragged his injured body towards the World Annihilation Demon God again. He was proud and fearless. Since he was going to fight, he would fight to the end. I don't believe that you still have the ability to perform that attack just now. Lin Feng's eyes brightened as he made a decisive decision. The space crack that was fluctuating violently in front of him was slowly healing. However, it had already absorbed a lot of the aura of death, causing a vacuum to form with the space crack as the center. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat as he felt the powerful suction force. Space disorder. Lin Feng gritted his teeth and shouted. He completely ignored such a dangerous situation. If he was sucked into the space crack, he might enter the space turbulence and never return. Lin Feng's hands fluctuated violently. The power of heaven and earth was converted into star source energy, causing the entire space to distort again. The space crack let out a tearing sound. Lend him a hand. Lin Feng would not let go of any opportunity to weaken the aura of death. With his strength, it was extremely difficult for him to create such a space crack, especially in the depths of the cemetery. Even if he managed to create a layer of space crack, it would be repaired naturally very soon. However, since there was a ready-made space crack, it was undoubtedly a great bargain. Sizzle. Sizzle. White light shone. Lin Feng's strength caused the space crack to open like a half-opened eye. It opened a little more and soon reached its limit. Lin Feng's strength was limited after all. Even so, the suction force caused by the space crack had increased by several times. What Lin Feng had to pay was only a little bit of the power of heaven and earth. There was a flash of light in Lin Feng's eyes. After adding fuel to the fire of the space crack, he did not stop and went into the depths of the cemetery. That was where the real culprit was. Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He wanted to know how the world-destroying demon god was doing. Soon whoosh! The scene in front of him suddenly changed. Lin Feng's eyes turned cold. In front of him was still the roaring and terrifying demon god. It was like an indestructible mountain that weighed heavily on his heart. Again and again, the world-destroying demon god's eyes were blood-red, and he was in a frenzy. The layer of black light around his body was still there, but weak. Much dimmer. As expected, Lin Feng was secretly delighted. There seemed to be no change, but in fact there was a huge change. Especially the world-destroying demon god's aura. The absorption of the aura of death had slowed down. It was obvious that Thunderbolt's previous attack had taken a huge toll on the apocalyptic demon god. Glare! Lin Feng's heart sank. That was the world devastator Fiend Celestial's eyes that were filled with hatred and anger. It was just a glance, but the world devastator Fiend Celestial soon ignored him and continued attacking the seal. The seal that was on the brink of collapse became even more unstable and could collapse at any moment. How long could it last? No idea. Lin Feng did not know. Even if he knew, it would be useless. Whoosh! Lin Feng circled the world annihilation demonic god again and resumed his normal form of harassment. The shield of truth continued to absorb the deathly aura, driving the world annihilation demonic god mad. However, it could not do anything to Lin Feng. He only kept roaring and threatening, but did not attack. Obviously, he knew what to do and what not to do. Even if he only had the intelligence of a child, the world-destroying demon god was after all the essence of 3,000 demon gods. He was not ordinary. He had rather powerful instincts. He did his best and left the rest to fate. Lin Feng glanced at the restriction from time to time. It would be a lie to say that he was not worried, but there was nothing he could do. Firstly, he was not familiar with the restriction. Secondly, although the restriction trapped the world-destroying demon god, it also protected him. If he wanted to attack the world-destroying demon god, it would be equivalent to attacking the restriction first. In that case, it would be more of a hindrance than a help. His frenzy seems to be ending soon, Lin Feng thought to himself. Although he was speeding, his mind was completely focused on the world-destroying demon god. He did not relax at all. Who knew if he would suddenly attack again? If he was not prepared, he might be killed. As time passed, and he kept observing, he became clearer about the ability of the world-destroying demon god. This layer of black metal light was the most important characteristic. Not only could it increase his combat power, but it could also strengthen his body. And the most important point was absorb. Accelerate the absorption of the aura of death. As the black light dimmed, it was as if the frenzy was coming to an end. The attack power of the world-destroying demon god was gradually weakening. At the same time, the absorption speed of the aura of death had also slowed down. Especially under his constant harassment, the efficiency of the world-destroying demon god was even lower. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Maybe he can win. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. Although the situation was critical, it was swaying like a scale. The final victory or defeat could be decided by a thin line. As long as the world-destroying demon god could not break the restriction, as the aura of death disappeared, he would soon lose all his power and be unable to come out. Would he succeed? Lin Feng did not know. He was extremely anxious. Instead of saying that he was fighting with a world-destroying demon god, it was better to say that he was fighting with time. Every second, a part of the aura of death disappeared in the cemetery. It was either assimilated by the spiritual energy of the outside world, absorbed by the space crack, or absorbed by the shield of truth. However, he could not stop the world-destroying demon god from absorbing the aura of death. Both of them were fighting with their lives on the line. All the key points were focused on the restriction. Roar, roar, roar. As if sensing the danger, sensing the disappearance of his power and the weakening of the aura of death, the world-destroying demon god was extremely agitated like a trapped beast. The black metallic light outside his body was getting dimmer and dimmer. It seemed to mean that he was about to end his berserk state. Good. Very good. Lin Feng clenched his fists tightly. He was full of anticipation, waiting for that moment. He must succeed. However, at that moment, Lin Feng's blood-red eyes, which were locked on to the world-destroying demon god, widened instantly. His heart seemed to have stopped beating. Whoosh! Thousands of rays of light lit up, illuminating the sky. It was extremely suffocating. Lin Feng was suspended in midair. Looking at the scene in front of him, he felt as if the sky had collapsed. It was endless darkness. It was an extremely terrifying black light. It was exactly the same as the one that attacked him previously. The world-destroying demon god roared, as if he had used up all his strength. His huge mountain-like body trembled violently. Black blood even seeped out of his terrifying scales. Even his ferocious face was distorted. Terrifying. Extreme terror had descended. No! Lin Feng roared. He opened his arms forcefully and completely gave up on defense. He wanted to use his physical body to attract the world-destroying demon god to take on the destructive attack. It did not matter even if his avatar was destroyed. However, the world-destroying demon god did not even look at him. The shocking black light was like a dazzling star. It condensed at one point and instantly descended like a comet, heading straight for the restriction. Boom! Chapter 1703. Lin Feng was completely shocked. He did not expect the world exterminator demon god to still have the energy to unleash his strongest attack. The dazzling white light was still in front of him, but his heart was in turmoil and he did not know how to react. The terrifying airflow forced Lin Feng to retreat. His eyes were red as he looked forward. Lin Feng felt suffocated. Was the seal broken? At this moment, countless thoughts attacked him. Lin Feng's body trembled uncontrollably. Fear. Yes, he was indeed afraid. It was not fear of death or the world exterminator demon god, but despair for the Douling world and the impending disaster that humanity was about to face. How terrifying was the world exterminator demon god's strength. Even if it was weakened by more than 90% by the seal, it could still cause fatal damage to him. How powerful was that? In the entire Douling world, there were only a handful of people who could hurt him, let alone kill him. However, the world exterminator demon god might only need to move a finger to destroy his body and soul. There was an absolute difference in the level of strength. No! Lin Feng gritted his teeth and instantly woke up. If he gave up, who else could save the Douling world? Who could save this hopeless situation? He did not know the current situation. Moreover, his original body had already reached the third stage of the snake pyramid. Including the destruction of the cemetery, Everything was not set in stone yet. Whoosh! Lin Feng retreated quickly. His eyes flickered. No matter what the situation was, he could not be rash. He had to think thrice before he acted. He had to see the situation clearly first. Lin Feng did not suffer any attacks as he retreated. He was already somewhat relieved. Perhaps there was a 1 in 10,000 chance that the seal would change. Or perhaps the World Exterminator Demon God's attack did not destroy the seal. Lin Feng stared at the turbulent airflow in front of him. He was extremely nervous. Would his thoughts come true? Soon, the answer was revealed. Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up completely. As the airflow recovered, his senses gradually became clearer. Through the weak, deathly aura, it was obvious that he could no longer sense the existence of any restrictions. The central area of the cemetery was like an empty plain. There were no more obstacles. What this meant was self-evident. The seal was broken. However, what about the world-destroying devil god? Zheng! Lin Feng fiercely twisted and instantly found the conspicuous target. It was an evil demon with enormous wings. Its entire body was densely covered in scales. It looked like a dragon, yet not a dragon. It looked like a tiger, yet also like a lion. It was like a prehistoric monster that was filled with a ruthless aura. In particular, its eyes were filled with ruthlessness and death. At this moment, he was also staring at him. Roar! The angry roar contained many emotions. In an instant, the world-destroying demon god that had locked onto its target seemed to have recognized Lin Feng. Its wings streaked across the air, and it immediately flew towards Lin Feng. Oh no! Lin Feng's expression changed. His subconscious reaction was to flee backward. His speed exploded to the limit, almost tearing the space apart. Lin Feng gritted his teeth, but he did not think too much at the moment. Regardless of the huge difference in strength between him and the world-destroying demonic god, he did not care if it was useful to escape in front of him. This was an instinctive reaction. However, at this moment, he had made the right decision. A few seconds later, Lin Feng completely woke up. He had not been attacked by the world-destroying demonic god. Although the world-destroying demonic god with unparalleled strength was chasing after him relentlessly, he could not catch up with him. Lin Feng smiled and instantly understood. He had forgotten that there was a limit in the Douling world. His speed was also more than 20 times faster than the Douling world's limit. He could easily maintain his maximum speed. No matter how strong the world-destroying demonic god was, his speed was limited to this. If he wanted to erupt with a speed that was faster than his maximum speed, it would cause the space to vibrate and create space cracks. To him, there were only disadvantages. At that time, just resisting the suction of space would be enough for him to worry. Even so, the world-destroying demonic god was still unwilling to give up. His eyes were filled with extreme hatred towards Lin Feng. He clearly recognized this hateful human. Although his intelligence was not high, he was like a natural enemy. Lin Feng's appearance had been deeply imprinted in the world-destroying demonic god's mind. He must kill this guy. Half an hour. Time passed slowly. However, the distance between them did not shorten at all. The world-destroying demonic god was also unlucky. If it were other martial artists, even if they could maintain their maximum speed, they would definitely consume their strength. However, Lin Feng was the same as him. He could easily reach his maximum speed with just his physical speed without any enhancement. As for the consumption of his physical strength, to an expert at Lin Feng's level, the speed of consumption was not as fast as the speed of recovery. Both of their speeds were the same. Even if the world-destroying demonic god chased for 1,000 or 10,000 years, he would not be able to catch up. Moreover, his situation was not very good. The distance between us has even increased. Lin Feng could clearly sense it. It was not that the world-destroying demonic god wanted to increase the distance between them. With his intelligence and hatred towards him, it was impossible for him to give up halfway or think of other ways. Therefore, The increasing distance between them was enough to prove that the world-destroying demonic god strength was constantly being consumed. His physical body is stronger than mine. It's naturally easy for him to erupt with his maximum speed. Lin Feng was secretly shocked. It was precisely because of this that the distance between them increased during the chase. It was very strange. Logically speaking, it was impossible to happen. However, it happened just like that. Although this was a small discovery, his intuition told him that this point was quite crucial. There must be a reason for every small discovery. The first possibility is that the world-destroying demonic god is seriously injured. His recovery speed is slow, so his physical strength is insufficient. The second possibility is that his body is not purely physical. Just like an undead expert, his body is indeed unkillable. However, it is closely related to the aura of death. Without the aura of death, even if an undead expert's physical body is still tyrannical, I'm afraid that even moving is a luxury. Lin Feng's eyes lit up slightly. This discovery was very important, because in his opinion, the probability of the first possibility was less than 20%. If it was because of a serious injury, there was no reason for him to slow down now. Most importantly, even if he was seriously injured, for an expert at the level of the world-destroying demonic god, recovering his physical strength was just a drop in the ocean. Therefore, the second possibility was very likely. There was a chance. Although the current situation was extremely bad, a glimmer of hope rose in Lin Feng's heart. If the world-destroying demonic god was really like an undead expert and needed to rely on the aura of death to survive, then he would be in trouble. Even if the restriction was broken, the aura of death in the cemetery was already almost exhausted. He believed that it would not be long before it was exhausted. At that time, the world-destroying demonic god would lose the aura of death. What else could he do? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The flame of hope was reignited. It seemed that everything he had done was not in vain. Chapter 1704. Lin Feng's guess was not entirely correct. Of course, he was also partially correct. Indeed, the body structure of the world-destroying demon god was similar to that of the undead experts. However, it was a much higher level. It was not simply the superposition of a corpse and the aura of death. Instead, it was a real life, a special and rare level of life. Back then, 3,000 demon gods gathered their essence to create the world-destroying demon god. The original intention was to continue the bloodline of the demon race and cultivate the future leader of the demon race. Who would have thought that there would be such a change? Gathering the essence of the demon gods, the aura of death, and being born with the creation of heaven and earth, the world-destroying demon god was in the Douling world. It was the only one of its kind. If it was in its perfect state, how could Lin Feng escape from its grasp? He would have been torn into pieces. The world-destroying demon god in its peak state was not afraid of the suction force at all. Lin Feng could not even block a casual attack from it. It should be noted that the power of the world-destroying demon god was only reduced by 99% through the restriction. However, it was still able to injure Lin Feng severely. It was a pity the world-destroying demon god was not in its complete form. Not to mention that its body was not saturated with energy, the degeneration of its spirit had reduced its power by more than 90%. How could a complete spirit be the same as a newborn spirit? Instead of saying that the world-destroying demon god had consciousness, it was more appropriate to say that it was instinctive. The most serious thing was that the world-destroying demon god had already unleashed the power of the demon god, which greatly consumed the essence of its body. It even used the world-destroying aurora twice on the basis of the power of the demon god. It was like an extremely damaged sword that was being used again and again. This was an attack that consumed a lot of the spirit power. However, the world-destroying demon god had no choice. When it attacked Lin Feng, it could be said that it had lost its rationality due to anger. The world-destroying aurora that it used in the end was inevitable. Otherwise, it would be difficult for it to escape from the restriction. The power of the demon god was an explosion of the body. The world-destroying aurora was the combination of the body and spirit. It was an ultimate attack. After using the apocalyptic aurora twice, it could be said that the apocalyptic demonic god had exhausted all the power of its spirit. After all, its spirit was still in a budding state and was now in a semi-dormant state due to the continuous consumption of power. It was only left with pure instinct to control its extremely weak body and pursue Lin Feng. The death aura was automatically repairing the damaged body. When the aura of death was slowly depleted like an energy source, the after-effects of using the demon god power gradually appeared, causing the world-annihilating demon god's speed to slow down. And this was only the beginning. As the aura of death decreased, the speed of the apocalyptic demon god would become slower and slower. Although he was fleeing, Lin Feng did not relax in the slightest. He was like a warrior in a duel, dodging the enemy's fatal attacks while looking for the enemy's flaws, ready to counterattack at any time. This was because Lin Feng knew very well that escaping would only be temporary. Killing the world-destroying demon god was the most fundamental and unavoidable. Most importantly, what could they do? A head-on confrontation? Needless to say, the world-destroying demon god's body was so terrifying that even if he attacked freely, it would be difficult to break through his defense. There are two ways. The first way is to cut off his energy source, which is also the aura of death. The second way is to entrust my main body to the serpent-shaped pyramid and gain something. There's a way to seal the world-destroying demon god into the restriction again. As Lin Feng flew at high speed, his thoughts did not stop at all. He thought of countless ways, but there were only two reliable ways that could be done. Perhaps there was a third way to go all out, such as forcefully breaking the space and pulling the world-destroying demon god into the space turbulence. Or he could use Pangu eyes to forcefully clash with the world-destroying demon god's soul. However, the success rate was too low. It was probably less than 1%. Unless there was no other choice, he was not willing to do so. The distance between us is increasing. If he really desires the aura of death, I believe he will soon give up chasing after me and return to the cemetery. Lin Feng was secretly shocked and waited patiently. His intuition told him that his guess was not wrong, because he could completely feel that his aura was weakening bit by bit. This was very crucial. As expected, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The unwilling and angry roar of a beast sounded in his ears. It was earth-shattering, as if it was telling the strong hatred. In an instant, the huge aura pressure disappeared. Lin Feng's lips curved into a faint smile. He was not in a hurry. He locked his aura and waited for 10 seconds before he turned around and chased after it. Leave? Then it's my turn to chase after it. The bolder one's heart was, the greater one's courage. Lin Feng ignored the gap between him and the world-destroying demon god. He was like an ant chasing after an elephant. It looked very strange, but it made the world-destroying demon god furious. He could not wait to tear Lin Feng into pieces. However, just as he could not do anything to Lin Feng in the restriction of the cemetery, he could not do anything to Lin Feng now. Chase. He could not catch up with Lin Feng. Attack. He was only left with the purest physical attack. How could he launch an attack if he could not catch up? Although in the world-destroying demon god's opinion, as long as he could catch that hateful fellow, he could easily tear him into pieces and crush him into dust, but he could not catch up. When the enemy advances, I retreat. When the enemy retreats, I advance. The game of chasing continued. Lin Feng was toying with the powerful world-destroying demon god, causing the latter to roar in anger. In the chase, Lin Feng and the world-destroying demon god were getting closer and closer to the cemetery. They could even smell the faint aura of death from afar. It was indeed the aura of death that had spread out from the cemetery and had yet to be completely integrated. SSS, the world-destroying demon god greedily absorbed the aura of death, like a fish in water. Lin Feng's eyes were bright. He watched, but did not take any action. Even if he had the idea, he cannot do it now. Absorb? Then let's absorb to our heart's content. Anyway, it was only a matter of time before the aura of death in the cemetery was exhausted. He is consuming the aura of death very quickly. He should be using it to heal his injuries. Lin Feng thought to himself. After observing the world-destroying demon god during this period of time, he could easily come to a conclusion. Such intense consumption of the aura of death could not be used to maintain his body. Moreover, the world-destroying demon god's body was not even 1,000th of its original size in the restriction. His weakness could be felt and seen even more clearly by himself. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to not even attack once during the chase. Perhaps he was not sure about other things, but he could use long-distance attacks when he was in the restriction. There was no reason for him to not be able to use it now. The only explanation was that he was weak. The weakness, after using a talent similar to Berserk, consumed a lot of energy. Even his body had become mini. Of course, this mini body was still huge compared to his own. We're here. Lin Feng's eyes brightened. The cemetery could be clearly seen from afar. The aura of death was also getting denser. The world-destroying demon god seemed to be rather happy. The anger for being played by him along the way had dissipated. He could not wait to devour the aura of death like a child. Looking at it from afar, Lin Feng frowned slightly. Although more than 90% of the aura of death in the cemetery had dissipated, less than 10% was still quite a lot, especially when the world-destroying demon god's devouring was all-encompassing. Not a single bit was wasted. His shield of truth could also absorb the aura of death, but the absorption range paled in comparison to that of the world-destroying demon god. Most importantly, he could not enter the cemetery at all. He could not avoid the world-destroying demon god. If he followed his footsteps, he might not even be able to absorb a single bit of the aura of death. But what could he do? Frowning, Lin Feng was at his wit's end. On the other hand, the world-destroying demon god was happily absorbing the aura of death. He did not care about Lin Feng's existence at all. As if he had been hungry for a long time, he let out a joyful roar. Flapping his huge wings, the world-destroying demon god slowly flew into the cemetery. As he flew, he absorbed the aura of death. He shook his head happily and looked at Meng Qi provocatively and mockingly from time to time. He's not stupid. He started to absorb the aura of death from the outermost area. Although the amount of aura of death is less, it's not a waste, Lin Feng thought to himself. Although he could not think of a way to stop it for the time being, he still followed the world-destroying demon god into the cemetery. No matter what, it was necessary to follow him. As for the solution, it was something he came up with. He would cross the bridge when he got there. He had to think of a way to deal with it. Bit by bit, time passed slowly. Lin Feng's frown deepened. As he went deeper into the cemetery, the aura of the world-destroying demon god seemed to be constantly strengthening. This cannot go on. If he really allowed him to recover part of his strength or get rid of his weakened state, his life would be in danger. He was very clear about the true strength of the world-destroying demon god. It was far from what he was seeing now. But what could he do? Attack him? What a joke. That was simply courting death. Absorb the remaining aura of death before he did? It was also impossible. Once he got close to such a narrow area, he would not even have a place to escape. It would be equivalent to entering a dead end. It would still be a dead end. What a headache. Lin Feng pursed his lips tightly. Hesitation and unwillingness flashed across his face. Could it be that he could only let him continue to absorb the aura of death and then wait for heaven's will to decide his fate? No. Lin Feng shouted angrily. How could he entrust his fate to someone else? How could he pin his hopes on heaven? Fight! Bang! Lin Feng launched another attack. However, his target was not the world-destroying demon god, but the cemetery. Extremely fierce attacks. Lin Feng was like an erupting tornado, sweeping through the entire cemetery in an instant. The external invisible barrier, the land of the cemetery, and the power of heaven and earth were constantly being consumed. Lin Feng did not care at all. The most important thing now was to use every bit of strength on the blade. Even if he used all his strength, his attacks would not be able to break through the defense of the world-destroying demon god. Rather than that, he might as well use it elsewhere. Didn't he care about the aura of death? Then, every bit counted. The eruption of the power of heaven and earth could not only consume the aura of death in the cemetery, but could also make the hole in the cemetery bigger. The speed at which the aura of death dissipated would also be faster. Although it was only a slight improvement, 1,000 miles of dike could be destroyed by an ant's nest. Dripping water could penetrate a stone. It was still the same saying. Do your best and leave the rest to fate. Do your best. There was no need to think about the outcome. Boom! Lin Feng's strength exploded. At this moment, the world-destroying demon god roared crazily. Chapter 1705. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. His attack should not have harmed the world-destroying demon god too much, but from his roar, it seemed that he was even angrier than before. Why? Lin Feng had a question mark in his mind, but he did not dare to stay any longer, because the world-destroying demon god, whose aura was locked on, was rushing out from the depths of the cemetery. His angry roar seemed to shake the sky, and the brief peace from before instantly turned into war. The world-destroying demon god attacked furiously, and Lin Feng was immediately forced to flee. Whoosh! Out of the cemetery, Lin Feng's eyes were still flashing with a faint light. He did not understand. He really did not understand. Was the world-destroying demon god really that stupid? The time he spent attacking him could have been used to absorb more death aura, but in the process of chasing him, the death aura was constantly being consumed because of the gap in the cemetery. By doing so, wasn't he picking up sesame seeds and throwing away watermelons? Lin Feng burst into laughter, and his heart calmed down. Maybe he was thinking too much. Maybe the world-destroying demon god was really that stupid. He originally only had the intelligence of a child, and it was normal for his constant destruction to arouse his hatred. With his current wisdom, it seemed difficult for him to analyze what was the best choice for him. Good. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and his heart leaped with joy. He did not expect to get such a good result from his unintentional mistake. Since the world-destroying demon god was chasing after him, he would let him chase to his heart's content. The longer the time dragged on, the less death aura in the cemetery. This was undoubtedly a good thing for him, but it was worse for the world-destroying demon god. Boom! At the entrance of the cemetery, the huge figure of the world-destroying demon god appeared again. The terrifying beast roar could destroy the heavens and the earth. Looking at Lin Feng's back, the world-destroying demon god hesitated, as if he was thinking of the previous chase. He roared again and again, as if he was unwilling to give up, but he did not chase after him. After hesitating for a while, he returned to the cemetery again. He was still very weak, but since he had started his harassment mode, how could Lin Feng give up? He had long since disregarded his own life and death. Moreover, he was very familiar with this kind of game of chasing and escaping. Entering and exiting the graveyard time and time again made the world-destroying demon god so angry that his eyes turned red, as if he had gone mad. However, what could they do to Lin Feng? An hour later, after returning to Demon Emperor Island, Lin Feng quickly recovered his power of heaven and earth, but he had consumed more than 80% of it. Even though he had to stall for time, he had to first sharpen his tools if he wanted to do a good job. Only when he had sufficient energy could he slowly play with the world-exterminating demon god. Anyway, he was not short time. Huff! Inhale, Lin Feng quickly absorbed the power of heaven and earth. His recovery time was extremely fast. The operation of the Pangu arts had already become something like an instinct. Lin Feng recalled bits and pieces of information about the world-destroying fiend gods in his head, looking for flaws from the clues. Previously, he had been moving and was unable to calm down and think carefully. But now he had enough time. There must be a way. Lin Feng believed that there would always be a way out. It was because he did not give up that he had the chance to confront the world-exterminating demon god. If he had not weakened the world-exterminating demon god time and time again, he would not be so weak after regaining his freedom. That was why he had the chance to defeat the world-exterminating demon god. Is there really no way to attack? Lin Feng pursed his lips tightly and thought to himself. To defeat the world-exterminating demon god, attacking and killing him was undoubtedly the simplest and most direct way. But even in a weakened state, the world-exterminating demon god still had extremely terrifying strength. Even though Lin Feng had not tried to attack, to a real martial artist, it was not too difficult to determine the approximate strength of the opponent. The world-exterminating demon god in a weakened state was still at least 10 times stronger than him. In a head-on confrontation, the chance of winning was not even 1 in 10,000. Although Lin Feng was confident, he was not conceited. Should I fight, or should I wait a little longer? Lin Feng was actually in a dilemma. On one hand, he was afraid that the world-exterminating demon god would continue to absorb the aura of death and become stronger and stronger. On the other hand, there was still a chance for his clone to perish together with the world-exterminating demon god, but the probability was not more than 1%. Fight, or should he continue to wait? With mixed feelings, Lin Feng found it hard to make a decision. Because once his clone decided to fight, there was no turning back. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, the mortality rate would be 100%. Phew! After letting out a breath of turbid air, Lin Feng opened his eyes. Bang! The power of heaven and earth around him dispersed. Lin Feng floated in the air and returned to his battle form. Although he had not fully recovered, 60% was enough. Now, every second counted. The world-exterminating demon god had absorbed the aura of death in the cemetery for as long as he stayed on Demon Emperor Island. Naturally, he could not let him be so stable. Wait a minute. He seemed to have overlooked something. Swish! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He immediately recalled the chase with the world-exterminating demon god until they entered the cemetery. He obviously had a certain level of intelligence. No matter how much he hated him, he would continue foolishly after being played once or twice. But what about 10 or 20 times? No. If the world-exterminating demon god suffered too many losses and was at his wit's end, he would choose to give up. But that was not the case in the cemetery. Nearly 100 times in total. Lin Feng thought to himself. Every time he entered the cemetery to destroy it, the world-exterminating demon god would rush out recklessly. Was it because he interrupted his absorption? Or was it because of other reasons? No matter how stupid he was, he should know that doing so would not benefit him at all. But if it was just pure hatred for himself, why didn't he chase after him when he fled to Demon Emperor Island? Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up completely. In a split second, he moved like the wind and headed to the cemetery where the world-exterminating demon god was at an extremely fast speed. I've overlooked a huge factor, and that is the cemetery itself. Why can the cemetery produce so much death aura with the help of the spirit gathering array, but not in other places? Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and his heart trembled. One possibility is that the cemetery's uniqueness can convert spiritual energy into death aura. This is what I deduced before, but it might not be the case. There is a second possibility. The graveyard itself can produce the aura of death. Lin Feng was very sure at this moment. The function of the spirit gathering array was very likely to use spiritual energy to catalyze the existence of energy, causing the cemetery to release more death aura. This was very different from the first possibility. The first possibility was that if the spiritual energy supply was lost, the death aura in the cemetery would be exhausted. But the second possibility was not the case. The disappearance of spiritual energy would only cause the cemetery to lose the external energy's impetus and not destroy its foundation. Therefore, the cemetery could still produce death aura. That was why the world-exterminating demon god valued it so much. Because what he was doing was not only consuming the death aura, but also destroying the source, the cemetery's root. Just like a towering tree, destroying some of its branches and leaves would at most hurt its vitality. But if the existence of its root was destroyed, it would be completely destroyed. Therefore, the world-exterminating demon god would risk his life to fight with him. No matter if it was 100 or 1,000 times, he would not let him destroy it. Perhaps the first time he attacked with all his strength was because of this reason. Lin Feng instantly understood a lot. Otherwise, the world-exterminating demon god could completely ignore him and continue attacking the restriction. Then, he could use his strongest strength to break the restriction and wait until he regained his freedom to deal with him. However, he did not think too much about it at that time. Now that he analyzed it carefully, there were many clues that he did not notice. The cemetery. Back to the source, it was still the cemetery. The cemetery is a whole, just like where Demon Emperor Island is. It has a complete magnetic field and is an independent space. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. Therefore, to destroy its foundation, attacking the exterior is not very useful. The real place to attack is the depths of the cemetery, where the surface and the earth's core are. That is where the cemetery's secrets are buried. It is not necessary to enter the deepest part of the cemetery. There are also traces in the outermost area of the cemetery. Yes, that's the way. As Lin Feng rushed over, he already made up his mind. Outside the cemetery. I'm counting on you, Wing. Lin Feng instructed. Don't worry, boss. Leave it to me. Wing, who was suddenly summoned, was not surprised. Instead, he was rather happy. First, he was entrusted with the important task by Lin Feng to matchmake the Aboriginals and the Human Alliance. Now, he was in charge of searching for the cemetery's secrets. He was placed in an important position. Wing had not felt such importance for a long time. It was because Lin Feng's strength was increasing too quickly. Whoosh, whoosh, flashing with a dazzling red and green light. Wing's real body was firmly rooted in the ground. From the outside, it was impossible to see anything unusual. However, Lin Feng shared Wing's vision, so he could clearly see everything underground. Countless wing insects drilled into the ground in an endless stream. 100,000, 1,000,000, 10 million. These were the powers of Wing's doppelgangers. They were extremely useful. It did not matter even if the world-destroying demon god discovered these wing insects. How many could he destroy by himself? Moreover, with the world-destroying demon god size, it would be a problem to find these wing insects. Furthermore, Lin Feng would be able to pin him down. Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He immediately headed for the cemetery. He was not needed here. Since that was the case, he might as well destroy the cemetery. Firstly, he could attract the world-destroying demon god's attention. Secondly, he could create a diversion. Roar! Roar! The sky seemed to be about to fall. A chase began again. The world-destroying demon god's reaction confirmed Lin Feng's speculation. The world-destroying demon god's reaction when he destroyed the invisible barrier outside the cemetery was still considered normal. Once he destroyed the surface, the world-destroying demon god's eyes would immediately turn bloodshot. He would attack Lin Feng relentlessly. Whoosh! Whoosh! As Lin Feng fled, he diverted some of his attention to observe the situation underground. When tens of millions of winged bugs burrowed into the ground to investigate, their efficiency was naturally astonishing. Although the graveyard was large, the winged bugs could explore a large area in an instant, from shallow to deep, from east to west. Not even the slightest detail was missed. It did not take long. Soon, Lin Feng had found the deepest secret under the surface of the graveyard. It was just as he had speculated. Chapter 1706. thick gray fog filled the underground. The surrounding winged insects quickly surrounded the area. Lin Feng's vision was extremely clear. Through the gray fog, he could vaguely see a grayish-black halo flashing with a strange energy. It was like an octopus that was connected to the outside world. It was like the roots of a towering tree. But now these roots were rather dispirited and dim. It should be used to absorb spiritual qi. It was originally connected to a large-scale spirit gathering array. Lin Feng thought to himself. There was no need to analyze it. Seeing was believing. Now he could see that the existence shrouded in the grayish-black halo was like a restriction. It was like a spinning top that was deeply rooted in the ground. Even with the winged insect's probing ability, they were still unable to find out how deep this restriction was. Clearly, this was not a natural formation. Back then, the 3,000 fiend gods were defeated by Pangu. They left behind endless essence to give birth to the fiend god of destruction. Before that, they had probably paved the way for him. This spinning top-shaped restriction is most likely one of them. It's like soil and nutrients for the fiend god of destruction. Since the large-scale spirit gathering array exists and is connected to it, it's enough to prove everything. Lin Feng said softly. After careful consideration, he knew its origin. The faint qi of death did not need to be sensed. He could see it just by looking. Although he did not know the principle behind the spinning top restriction or how exquisite its structure was, he was certain of one thing. The spinning top restriction was the cemetery's source, the root of the qi of death. Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He did not care about the enraged fiend god of destruction behind him. He got wing to command all the winged insects to attack the spinning top restriction. He could not think of a way to break it just by looking. He could only try to destroy the spinning top restriction and break the root of the qi of death. The winged insects were not afraid of exhaustion at all. Qi, qi, qi. The scene was extremely grand. Unfortunately, no one could see it as it was deep underground. Tens of thousands of winged insects took the lead to attack. A pitch-black color instantly covered the thick gray fog. However, pung, the grayish-black halo suddenly erupted with an astonishing power, and all the winged insects that came close to it were directly shattered by the dazzling light. Not a single one of them remained. In the blink of an eye, the first batch of winged beetles was annihilated. Soon, the second batch of winged beetles entered one after another. Exhaustion. Lin Feng was not afraid at all. To the current wing, the number of winged insects was astronomical. Consuming tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of winged insects was just a drop in the ocean. Perhaps it would take a very long time to completely replenish them. However, the winged insects were not irreplaceable. The most important thing was to make the best use of them. Boom! Rumble! The grayish-black halos were like dutiful guards, constantly bombarding the winged insects that approached the restriction. Each attack would take away the lives of countless winged insects. However, Lin Feng did not care. As he attracted the World Annihilation Demon God's attention, he got wing to continue attacking. Martial artists have their limits. Restrictions also have limits. I want to see how much energy is stored in this spinning top formation. Lin Feng was still confident. There was no need for too many tricks. He was very sure that the spinning top formation's energy was not endless. The fact that the World Annihilation Demon God broke through the restriction was the best proof. Based on his estimation, the spinning top formation's energy could not compare to the number of winged insects. He was only worried about the World Annihilation Demon God that was constantly roaring and attacking from behind. He was the only variable. As for the spinning top formation, he was confident that he could break through it. Time passed slowly. Lin Feng mustered all his strength and forcefully held back the World Annihilation Demon God, not giving him any chance to return to the cemetery. The distance between them was sometimes long and sometimes short. It was always an insurmountable distance. However, he could feel that the World Annihilation Demon God's weakness was slowly recovering. The aura of death was very important to him. I must not let him recover. Lin Feng clenched his teeth, his heart trembling. The world annihilation demon god was already so terrifying in its weak state. Once it recovered part of its strength, it would be impossible for him to fight against it. This was obvious. When that time came, the end of the Doling world would probably arrive. In a short period of time, the winged insects had depleted more than 1 million. However, Lin Feng did not care at all. Instead, he got winged to increase the speed of their attacks. Time was the most precious. Soon, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Underground, he could clearly see that the grayish-black light circle's color was much dimmer. The frequency of its attacks was also much slower. Gradually, more and more winged insects broke through the barrier. Every time the grayish-black light circle attacked, it could only destroy a portion of the winged insects. Boom! The tide-like attacks finally broke through the defense of the spinning top formation. However, it was only the outermost defense. Wow! Lin Feng's eyes widened. At this moment, he was already very close to the spinning top formation. However, it was different from what he had imagined. It was not a formation. Instead, it was a huge lump of metal that was flashing with a black metallic glow. It was like a huge fortress. Around the huge fortress, there were beehive-like small holes that seemed to be breathing. One could completely feel the dense aura of death that was hidden in it. The holes were very small. However, it was just enough for the winged insects to enter. Great! Lin Feng was instantly filled with joy. It seemed that even the heavens were helping him. Just by looking at the metallic surface of the spinning top formation, one could tell that it was not an ordinary object. Even though there were many tiny holes, it did not affect the defense of the spinning top formation at all. Even if he came personally, he might not be able to break this metal lump. However, it was just right for the winged insects. Swoosh! Swoosh! Batches of winged insects entered. Lin Feng's lips curled into a faint arc. Using the winged insect's vision, he could clearly see the interior of the spinning top formation. From bottom to top, the aura of death appeared like smoke. It was extremely dense. The top of the spinning top formation was connected to the cemetery, and its center was connected to the deepest part of the cemetery. Exquisite carvings were flashing with light. The aura of death was moving upwards. Most of it entered the center of the carvings, which was the corresponding area of the deepest part of the cemetery. As the carvings spread out like ripples, the aura of death continued to spread in all directions. The entire network was clearly visible and enveloped the cemetery. If one did not enter the underground, one would not know that there was such a huge secret hidden under the cemetery. Phew! Lin Feng couldn't help but let out a long sigh. His eyes lit up. The winged insect's entry and exploration had solved all his doubts. Just as he had speculated, the cemetery was like the home of the world-destroying demonic god. As long as the cemetery and the restriction of the spinning top were not destroyed, the world-destroying demonic god would have inexhaustible chi of death. However, now, even the heavens want you dead. Lin Feng's eyes were bright. Batches of winged insects entered the spinning top formation through countless holes. Without the grayish-black halo, the spinning top formation had no other defense. Its internal structure was extremely complicated, like a delicate machine. Then, millions of winged insects began to devour everything in the spinning top formation. Ants surrounding an elephant. The scene was extremely spectacular. They did not need to destroy the hard outer shell of the spinning top formation. They only needed to nibble at every small part inside. If the spinning top formation was compared to a martial artist with extremely strong defense, then the small parts in its body were like the internal organs and the insignificant cells. These were the foundation of the spinning top formation. They were also the weakest part of its defense. Roar! The world-destroying demon god trembled violently with red eyes. It was the world-destroying demon god, who seemed to have sensed something and suddenly stopped. Its huge body trembled violently, and it let out an extremely unpleasant and hoarse voice. The world-destroying demon god immediately turned around and walked straight to the cemetery. That mournful voice made one's hair stand on end. Ha! Lin Feng immediately stopped. Looking in the direction where the world-destroying demon god left, his eyes were shining. As expected, he still found out. After staying in the cemetery for so long, and this place was specially set up for him, he guessed that the world-destroying demon god would have sent something. But so what? The diversion tactic was completely effective. The world-destroying demon god was led by the nose and wasted so much time. If he went back now, would it be too late? You're going to lose. Lin Feng clenched his fists, and an indescribable feeling rose in his heart. He had weakened the world-destroying demon god again and again, and had tried various methods. Finally, the clouds parted and the moon shone. The dawn of hope was brighter than ever. Although the winged insect's devouring speed was incomparable, quantity could make up for everything. At this moment, he could completely feel the changes in the spinning top formation. Cut off the roots. Destroy the source of the cemetery. Without the aura of death, the world-destroying demon god would definitely lose. Whoosh! With bright eyes, Lin Feng immediately followed the world-destroying demon god. Although victory was in his hands, he could not let his guard down until the last moment. Boom! Boom! The world-destroying demon god had completely gone mad. The earth shook and the sky shook. The roar was soul-shaking, and a terrifying power erupted. The world-destroying demon god was like a headless fly, looking for the culprit. His blood-red eyes looked like he was possessed. But the entire cemetery was connected, and the structure was much more complicated than what he had seen. Although the world-destroying demon god was strong, his intelligence was too low. How was he going to protect his home? He did not know. Seeing the disaster coming, but being unable to stop it, not to mention the world-destroying demon god, any expert would be so terrified that they would go crazy. From the outer region of the cemetery to the inner region, and then to the deepest region, the world-destroying demon god was roaring hysterically, filled with indignation and anger. He kept bombarding the ground, but there was nothing he could do. Lin Feng floated in midair, looking at the world-destroying demon god from afar. He did not get close to him, nor did he pull away from him. He maintained a subtle connection. Seeing the world-destroying demon god go crazy, he was filled with joy, and his eyes sparkled. He had made the right bet. Hit the snake where it hurts. The cemetery was the root of the world-destroying demon god. It was all he had. No matter how strong he was, without the aura of death, he was no different from an ordinary undead expert. Now, he was very sure that the world-destroying demon god's doomsday was coming. I will definitely win. Lin Feng clenched his fists, and his eyes shone. Even so, in his heart, there was still an indescribable uneasiness. He could not relax until the last moment, because he was the world-destroying demon god. Chapter 17:07. The destruction was still ongoing. The flickering light of the spinning top restriction flickered like a light bulb. Even the appearance of the death chi was intermittent. When millions of winged insects attacked, it was an extremely terrifying power. They surged in like a tide of ants, causing the spinning top restriction to explode instantly. The world-destroying demon god became more and more crazy. It attacked and roared everywhere in the cemetery, but it was completely useless. Lin Feng watched from afar. He did not intervene and could not do anything. He could not deal with the world-destroying demon god, and he could not do anything to the spinning top restriction. Although he looked calm, his heart was in turmoil. He was extremely anxious. He had never felt that time pass so slowly. Every moment was filled with danger. Lin Feng's clenched fists were sweating. His lips were pursed. It was the most critical moment. Whether the Douling world lived or died, whether humans could survive, it all depended on the world-destroying demon god. Roar! There was another shocking roar. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. His expression changed slightly. The world-destroying demon god, who had been wandering around the cemetery as if it had lost its direction, suddenly rushed out. Its huge body went straight to the deepest part of the cemetery, where it was once trapped. What was it going to do? Seize the time to absorb the death aura? Or Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He did not know, but there was one thing he was sure of. This time, the world-destroying demon god seemed to be very determined. It did not hesitate anymore. It was unusually decisive. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure flashed. He followed the world-destroying demon god into the deepest part of the cemetery. He did not enter and still maintained a certain distance. However, there was no barrier between the deepest part of the cemetery and the inner area. Everything could be seen from afar. The world-destroying demon god was crazily bombarding the ground. The banging sounds were earth-shattering. What was it going to do? Lin Feng's expression was a little ugly. From the winged insect's observation, he knew very well where the world-destroying demon god was bombarding the ground. It was precisely the place where the engravings were the deepest and where the energy was the strongest. It was also the place where the world-destroying demon god was trapped that day, where the original restriction was. Pung! Lin Feng instantly widened his eyes, his heart palpitating. Suddenly, everything became clear. He finally understood what the world-destroying demon god was doing. He had been running around the cemetery and attacking randomly. He was obviously looking for the entrance underground. Originally, in the deepest part of the carvings, the center of the cemetery should be the place with the strongest defense. But he missed a key point. Restriction. The seal that had trapped the apocalyptic demon god was shattered. It was as though the strongest defensive system had been destroyed. The restriction that had formed a gap in the defense was the so-called strongest point. It was very likely that it had become the weakest point. Thinking of this, Lin Feng's heart shuddered. He looked at the world-destroying demonic god with hesitation, unable to decide what to do. What to do? Even if he knew now, what could he do? There was no way he could stop the apocalyptic fiend celestial. The difference in strength between his avatar and the apocalyptic fiend celestial was just too great. Even if he tried to harass him, would the apocalyptic fiend celestial care? Boom! The sound of an explosion suddenly rang out, causing Lin Feng to stop jumping. At this moment, it was as if heaven and earth were falling apart. The crazy attacks of the world annihilation demon god were effective. The originally intact ground cracked, and as the world annihilation demon god attacked again and again, the ground began to crack from the center and spread in all directions. In an instant, pong, the ground cracked open. Hua! The surging and boundless aura of death gushed out like a spring. The eyes of the world-destroying demon god lit up completely. He was greedily absorbing the aura of death. He squinted his eyes and took a deep breath. The extremely dense aura of death was instantly sucked into the body of the world-destroying demon god, as though it was a bottomless pit. Oh no! Lin Feng's expression changed drastically. He instantly understood everything. Perhaps he had thought too highly of the world-destroying demon god. He was simply acting on instinct. He only had one goal, to absorb the aura of death. Where was the aura of death the densest? The answer was obvious. It was at the center of the engravings. He might not be able to find the place with the weakest defense in the entire cemetery, but his instinct led him there. It could be said that there was fate in the unseen world. I can't let him absorb it like this. Lin Feng reacted instantly. If he allowed the world-destroying demon god to absorb the aura of death without restraint, his strength would increase rapidly, and he would be able to get through the period of weakness. Lin Feng clenched his fists. In an instant, the shield of truth shone brightly. One by one, the undead experts whizzed out and went straight for the world-destroying demon god. Attack? No, snatch food. Roar! The world annihilation demon god was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the undead experts. Due to the similarities between them, the world annihilation demon god noticed the undead experts absorbing the deathly aura. He widened his bell-like eyes and swiped his right claw, tearing one of the undead experts into pieces. A holy king-level undead expert. He had the aura of death, which had an extremely strong recovery ability, but he couldn't even block one attack from the world-destroying demon god. It wasn't worth sacrificing, but there was no other way. Lin Feng clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were bright. At this moment, he couldn't care about wasting time. He had to stall for time. After all, there was a considerable number of undead experts. They entered the cemetery in an instant and snatched away part of the world-destroying demon god's food. Most of them delayed the world-destroying demon god, greatly reducing his absorption speed. Roar! Roar! The world-destroying demon god roared and attacked continuously. At this moment, he couldn't care less about absorbing the aura of death. One by one, the undead experts were killed without any resistance. Even if the world-destroying demon god didn't use the aura of death, his physical attack power was still quite terrifying. Almost in the blink of an eye, dozens of undead experts were declared dead. However, Lin Feng didn't show any heartache. Instead, his eyes became brighter and brighter. Good. Very good. Pa! In an instant, the surface of the inner area of the cemetery bulged. In the blink of an eye, countless black-winged insects appeared. Almost in an instant, another hole appeared on the surface of the inner area of the cemetery. Winged insects appeared one after another. At the same time, they brought out endless aura of death. It was better to release it than to block it. Pa! 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 In just a few seconds, countless holes appeared on the surface of the cemetery. The aura of death that was originally gushing out from the deepest part of the cemetery split into countless tributaries and flowed out. Lin Feng didn't stop at all. As he ran, the shield of truth quickly absorbed the aura of death. Fight! Lin Feng naturally wouldn't be so foolish to fight the world-destroying demon god head-on. Instead, he chose to use a roundabout strategy. The world-destroying demon god was indeed powerful. However, the combined attack of millions of winged insects couldn't be underestimated. Naturally, he couldn't let the world-destroying demon god have the upper hand. Absorb the aura of death? Then let's all absorb it together. Lin Feng's strategy was extremely correct. It made the world-destroying demon god stomp his feet in anger. His anger turned into fierce attacks, and he vented it all on the innocent undead experts. In the blink of an eye, the undead experts that originally surrounded the world-destroying demon god were all killed. Mortality rate, 100%. However, it was a worthy death. In just a short period of time, the entire cemetery was filled with holes. The destructive power of the winged insects was astonishing. The deathly aura that emerged from the deepest part of the cemetery was already extremely thin. Most of it was scattered throughout the entire cemetery, and it continued to spread outwards, slowly diluting. Bang! 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 The world-destroying demon god attacked again and hit the surface of the ground. The original crack became bigger again. However, the aura of death that was gushing out was just so. The world-destroying demon god's eyes turned purple and his blood vessels froze. He let out an extremely unwilling sound. Suddenly, he did something that shocked Lin Feng. The world-destroying demon god actually went underground. What was he doing? Lin Feng took a deep breath and looked at the place where the world-destroying demon god disappeared in a daze. He was shocked. This was something that he did not expect at all. When the world-destroying demon god entered the spinning top restriction, his goal was clear. Naturally, he wanted to absorb the aura of death. Furthermore, he could not stop him at all. Fortunately, he had continuously released a large amount of the aura of death. Although the aura of death still existed, its density had decreased by at least 10 times. It was also intermittent. The spinning top restriction was almost destroyed. Hurry up, Lin Feng shouted in his heart, but he could not exert any strength. The bite of the winged insects had destroyed more than half of the spinning top restriction. However, there were still some parts that were working. The most shocking thing was that the spinning top restriction had not reached the bottom. The winged insects continued to descend, but they seemed to be exploring a bottomless pit. It still had not reached the bottom of the spinning top restriction. How much longer would it take? What was at the bottom? Lin Feng was not sure. As the pressure increased the further they went, the more difficult it was for the winged insects to move. They were much slower. Damn it, Lin Feng scolded in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Even a corner dog would jump over a wall, let alone a powerful existence like the world-destroying demon god. He entered the spinning top restriction purely out of instinct. His incomparable thirst for the aura of death made him go deeper and deeper. With the winged insect's vision, he could see the huge body of the world-destroying demon god slowly descending. Following that, the aura of death was disappearing and being absorbed. The power of the world-destroying demon god was increasing bit by bit. However, there was nothing he could do about it. If he were to let him continue to absorb, what would the result be? Lin Feng frowned. There were many thoughts in his mind. He had no idea what was at the bottom of the spinning top restriction. This unknown feeling was very uncomfortable. His intuition told him that it would definitely be a disaster for the world-destroying demon god to enter the spinning top restriction. However, what could he do? Destroy. It was constantly being destroyed, until the entire spinning top restriction could no longer see any aura of death. However, at the same time, the world-destroying demon god could no longer be seen. He could vaguely feel his aura in the depths of the ground. However, the winged insects could no longer drill down. The deeper they went, the stronger the pressure. The winged insect's strength was too weak. Bang! Bang! His heart was beating rapidly. Lin Feng's expression was ugly. His chest rose and fell rapidly. An ominous premonition kept surging in his heart. Looking at the bottomless spinning top restriction, he could only feel his hair stand on end. He was shocked. All of a sudden, roar! A deafening sound rang from underground. It was a soaring anger. It was a kind of madness to vent. It was the aura of a king. It was incomparably powerful. Lin Feng's face was pale. Chapter 1708. The worst-case scenario. Lin Feng's body trembled slightly. What he didn't want to happen, the most still happened. No matter how hard he tried, the world-destroying demonic god still found his way. From breaking the restriction to returning to the cemetery, and then to the spinning top restriction, everything seemed to be telling him that heaven's will was irreversible. The birth of the world-destroying demon god was unstoppable. Is it over? Lin Feng looked at the deepest part of the bottomless spinning top restriction with mixed feelings in his heart. Just by listening to the voice, he knew that the strength of the world-destroying demon god had increased by a level. Previously, he was in a weakened state after continuously attacking. Now, even if he hadn't recovered to his peak, at least he had safely passed the weakened state. Such a monster was almost invincible in a weakened state. After passing the weakened state, how terrifying would it be? It was hard to imagine. Phew. Lin Feng sighed deeply after letting out a long breath. Although he was unwilling, what could he do now that the reality was like? He had already done what he needed to do, but the results still couldn't be changed. With his eyes flickering, Lin Feng looked at the spinning top restriction again with a complicated expression. Then, he broke through the air and left the cemetery. There was no need to die. Give up? No, there was no such word in Lin Feng's dictionary, no matter how bad the situation was. The world-destroying demon god was even stronger and scarier that day, and he still challenged without fear. It could be said that the reason why the world-destroying demon god became like this was because Lin Feng weakened him again and again. Although he seemed to have recovered part of his strength now, so what? The cemetery had already been destroyed. Although the spinning top restriction was mysterious, it should have been mostly destroyed. There's still a chance. Lin Feng sat cross-legged in the restriction of Demon Emperor Island, hiding his aura. Beside him was Kuei Tianyuan, who was at a loss and helpless. He had already learned about the world-destroying demon god from Lin Feng and didn't go far. He was also hiding in the restriction of Demon Emperor Island. After all, It was relatively safe here. Unless Demon Emperor Island was completely destroyed, he wouldn't be in any danger. As for breaking into the restriction, it seemed that the world-exterminating fiend gods did not have such intelligence. Lin Feng was waiting. Firstly, he was waiting to see how strong the world-destroying demon god was after he recovered. Secondly, he was waiting for the progress of his main body. On the 7th level of Demon Sovereign Island, his main body had already broken through the 3rd level and entered the 4th level under immense pressure. Even though he didn't know how many stages there were, he believed that all of this was definitely not for nothing. Since the 3,000 demon gods had set up so many checkpoints in the snake-shaped pyramid, one after another, they must have their reasons. Presumably, they would not be so bored. Soon, Lin Feng thought, even if it's not this checkpoint, at most, it's the next one. I'll definitely find the secret. Lin Feng was still confident. He had faith in his main body and the 3,000 fiend gods. He believed that the 3,000 demon gods would definitely have a backup plan and would definitely not allow the world-destroying demon gods to descend. He also believed that there was always a way out. Time passed slowly. After 2 hours, Lin Feng still did not see the appearance of the world-destroying demon gods. Apart from the roar that sounded like a furious dragon, he could not see anything else. Even though his clone had returned to Demon Sovereign Island, Lin Feng still had spies all over the cemetery. With the entire cemetery as the center, winged insects were lying in ambush everywhere. They were used as heavenly eyes to monitor the world-destroying demon gods. The situation was extremely unfavorable. Something strange, Lin Feng thought. At the bottom of the spinning top restriction, there was a secret that he did not know of. This secret was probably rather important. Given the character of the world-destroying demon gods, there was no reason for them to not appear after recovering part of their strength and recovering from their weakened state. After all, they clearly knew that he was outside. How could they not seek revenge? However, they did not appear. Obviously, the attraction at the bottom of the spinning top restriction was much stronger than him. What was it? Lin Feng's eyes flickered, but he did not know. This feeling of curiosity and doubt entangled his mind, giving him the urge to find out. However, this impulse was merely a fantasy. With the world-destroying demon gods inside, he could not enter at all. How could he find out? Thinking of this, Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. He could not enter with the world-destroying demon gods inside, but what if the world-destroying demon gods were not there? Lin Feng was hesitant. The idea was good, but there was another problem. If the world-destroying demon gods did not appear, how could he lure them out? Could he rely on his clone to do so? What was the difference between that and seeking death? Even if his clone lured the world-destroying demon gods out, who would go to the bottom of the spinning top restriction to investigate? Lin Feng could not help but frown deeply and sigh softly. There were too many problems. One problem was intertwined with another. There seemed to be hope now, but he did not have the strength to do so. Let's wait a little longer, Lin Feng muttered softly. Half an hour passed very quickly. Suddenly, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. As if he had discovered something, he stood up abruptly. Swoosh! With a flash, Lin Feng disappeared into the restriction. Kuei Tianyuan, who was beside him, was puzzled. He did not know what had happened. Outside Demon Sovereign Island, an expert of the demon clan stood in the air. He held a huge golden rod in his hand. His hair was slightly curled up, and his strong body emitted a faint aura of an expert. His lean face looked as if he had been through a lot. His eyes sparkled as if he could see through everything. The commander of the demon clan, the great sage. His fiery eyes were looking at the cemetery. He seemed to be thinking about something, but also seemed to be looking at something. Suddenly, whoosh, the great sage's eyes brightened. He turned his head. As far as his eyes could see, the originally empty space suddenly tore apart. Instantly, a figure appeared. It was Lin Feng. Congratulations. Lin Feng looked at the great sage in front of him and smiled faintly. Just from the look in his eyes, he could tell that he was a true great sage, not a fake great sage whose body had been taken over by the world-destroying demon god spirit. It was purely a feeling. Every single expert had their own unique characteristics, and with his current strength, he naturally wouldn't be mistaken. The great sage gave a rare smile and nodded. After not seeing him for a long time, the great sage had become much calmer. He was no longer as rash and impulsive as before. There were not many words to express their feelings. However, the man and the demon clan, who were originally on opposite sides, smiled and wiped away their enmity. They were no longer enemies. Although the great sage held grudges, he also remembered favors. However, he was not good with words. Otherwise, he would not have betrayed the demon clan to help Lin Feng protect the human camp. Can you do me a favor? Lin Feng went straight to the point without hesitation. Although he had not interacted much with the great sage, he knew his character. There was no need to be polite. It would only make him seem overly sentimental. Speak. The great sage did not hesitate and directly replied. Do you know about the world-destroying demon god? Lin Feng looked at the great sage and said seriously, the spirit that had taken over your body previously? I do. The great sage's expression changed. His voice was somewhat strange. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. The great sage's reaction was somewhat unusual. It was possible that he knew about the world-destroying demon god. However, the great sage also seemed to know that the spirit that had taken over his body was the world-destroying demon god. Lin Feng suddenly understood. He had forgotten that the great sage had fought with the world-destroying demon god's spirit in his body. It seemed that the great sage had devoured the demon god's spirit. Wait, if that was the case, Lin Feng's eyes brightened. He could not help but look at the great sage. The great sage had already spoken. I started this. I am responsible for the disaster. Today, I will do my part. The great sage's voice was heavy. He seemed to be regretting his actions that day. Looking at the great sage, Lin Feng did not ask anything. However, he already had a rough idea. Combining what Fox G said and the Blood Tiger Emperor K, Tinyuan's memories, he had deduced that the world-destroying demon god spirit had appeared before Fox G and possessed the great sage's body. Now, it seemed that the great sage, who had regained his memories, was the instigator. However, it was useless to blame him. If the great sage had not released part of the world-destroying demon god spirit that day, the world-destroying demon god with a complete spirit would be even more terrifying. He would not be able to find any weakness. Did you devour the world-destroying demon god spirit? Lin Feng asked immediately. The great sage nodded and said seriously, yes. That's why. I know him very well, including his weakness. Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes instantly brightened. He believed that no one knew his own weakness better than him. No matter how deeply he hid it, his memories would not lie. Let's talk while we walk. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows. The great sage responded. Then, the two of them headed to the cemetery. It was a short journey. During the journey, Lin Feng and the great sage conversed a lot. Lin Feng, in particular, learned many secrets of the world-destroying demon god from the great sage. This included the structure of his body. It was different from humans and demons. Demons cultivated their inner core and physique. However, the world-destroying demon god cultivated the demonic yuan, the source of the aura of death. After absorbing the aura of death into the demonic yuan, it would be transformed into demonic power to strengthen the cells and the body. There was no so-called bottleneck. As long as he absorbed enough aura of death, the world-destroying demon god's strength would increase infinitely. Therefore, he could exist in the Douling world. To a certain extent, it was not wrong to call him a sage ruler. However, his strength was at the Starry Sky level. Furthermore, he was much stronger than ordinary Starry Sky experts. The world-destroying demon god was very special. He walks on a different path of body, Lin Feng said softly. In the past, he might have been very surprised. However, now that he had come into contact with more people, his horizons were broadened. The world-exterminating demon god was exactly the same as him and the great sages. They both cultivated the Tao of the body. However, the world-exterminating demon god's talent and starting point were different. They far surpassed him, let alone the great sages. Instead of saying that his path of body was better, it would be more accurate to say that his starting point was too high. It was like an ordinary person who finally became rich after earning money for a lifetime. However, he met the heir of the richest person who had a huge inheritance when he was born, of course. There was no such thing as perfection in the world. No matter how strong a martial artist was, he would have a weakness. The world-destroying demon god was no exception. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.